Chapter 700. Duo. Ling Han's tongue was like spring thunder as he roared loudly, instantly dispersing Jia Ming's aura. You should cultivate body arts, right? Jia Ming said to Ling Han, and without waiting for Ling Han to answer, he continued, I also cultivate body arts. There's no harm in telling you that everyone in the Earth Dragon sect cultivates body arts, which is what sets our sect apart from the rest. He paused, then continued, I'm telling you this to let you know that if your confidence comes from body arts, that's an unrealistic fantasy. The body art I cultivate is the Earth Dragon technique, and after cultivating it, I'll possess the power of an Earth Dragon, crushing everything. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh, and said, at the beginning of the world, tens of thousands of divine beasts were born, and the strongest divine beasts were true dragons and true phoenixes. What's an Earth Dragon? He cultivated the 9 dragons tyrant body art, and possessing the power of 9 true dragons wasn't a boast, but you possessing the power of 1 Earth Dragon was nothing. Moreover, it was also because everyone hadn't cultivated it, or else he'd be able to blow Jia Ming to the ends of the earth with a single breath. Jia Ming snorted coldly, and said, everyone thinks that true dragons are high above, but they don't know that Earth Dragons don't lose to true dragons. Ling Han waved his hand, and said, you're now arguing with me about the ranking of divine beasts? Jia Ming grinned, revealing 2 rows of dense white teeth. The 2 canine teeth on his upper lip were actually long and piercing out like the fangs of a wild beast, appearing extremely striking. He said, of course not. I just want to let you know how powerful an Earth Dragon is, and I possess a powerful Earth Dragon bloodline. Every other day, my ancestral bloodline will recover a little more, becoming more and more powerful. Isn't an Earth Dragon an earthworm? Hunyo suddenly clapped her small hands and cried out in realization. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, that's right, we're now listening to a little earthworm boasting about how awesome it is. Everyone smiled, while Hunyo laughed loudly. She had always been the one who gave Ling Han the most face. Jia Ming stretched out his right hand, and there were numerous blue veins throbbing. Blood surged, and there was a gurgling sound. Hung, his head full of black hair curled backwards, and a blood-red aura gushed out from his body. It was as if something terrifying was about to awaken. Ling Han was slightly shocked. This person's blood was surging like thunder, showing his astonishing achievements in body techniques. In terms of rank, the 9 dragons tyrant body art was definitely higher than the Earth Dragon secret art. However, before one cultivated it to the extreme, it was very difficult to distinguish the two. For example, one's limit was 100, while the other's was 1000. However, before reaching 100, the Earth Dragon art would not be weaker than the 9 dragons tyrant body art. The difference was that the 9 dragons tyrant body art could allow Ling Han to reach 100 faster. Both of them were in the spiritual infant tier, and were naturally far from reaching the pinnacle. Thus, Ling Han definitely could not underestimate the other. Ling Han walked out from the crowd, also twisting his neck and moving his arms and legs. Pa, 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 the bones in his body also emitted explosive sounds, and his blood began to flow faster, gurgling like thunder. Body techniques were different from origin power. Before using brute force, one needed to go through a warm-up process to completely explode with power. Let's battle in the sky, Ling Han said indifferently. Yet Jia Ming refused, and said, what, you still care about the lives of mere ants? Xiao, he leaped up, and his figure instantly accelerated to the extreme, throwing a punch at Ling Han. Brute force had the explosive power, and the speed of this leap was really not inferior to Ling Han's thunderclap 9th heaven. Of course, it was precisely because this was an explosive power that it was only for a moment. It was impossible to maintain such a high speed for a long time, or else Jia Ming's bones and flesh would all collapse, because he would not be able to bear the burden. However, this did not apply to Ling Han, because he also cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and his physique was comparable to rare metal 1 tier higher, which was enough to bear this kind of explosive power countless times. Ling Han snorted, clenched his fist tightly, and threw a punch at Jia Ming. Peng! The two fists collided, and instantly, the air immediately formed a ripple, spreading in all directions. Peng, 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 the ground seemed to be forcefully shoveled up, and a terrifying power rolled out, spreading in all directions. Peng, 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 Zhu Xian'er and the others were all sent flying. Fortunately, with Hu Niu and Wenren Qian looking after them, everyone only appeared to be in a sorry state, but did not suffer any injuries. Wenren Qian could not help but take a few more glances at Hu Niu. Although she already knew that Hu Niu was freakish, seeing it with her own eyes was still shocking. A little girl of 7 or 8 years old was actually a spiritual infant tier elite, and had the ability to challenge those of a higher tier, unfathomable. Amidst the smoke and dust, Ling Han and Jia Ming fought fiercely, one punch after another. Close combat, every move and style was extremely dangerous. Because there was not the slightest bit of buffer, once one's power was insufficient, they would immediately be hit. If it was light, their bones would be broken, and if it was heavy, they would be directly killed. Everyone watched anxiously, but separated by the smoke and dust, they could not hear anything, and had to continuously retreat because the aftermath was too terrifying, enough to pose a threat to them. Only Hu Niu was completely confident in Ling Han, and began to eat leisurely, not in the least bit anxious. The fierce battle continued for about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, and suddenly there was no movement. Then, a figure could be seen soaring into the sky, standing proudly in the air. Ha! Delightful, delightful. That was Jia Ming. His head of black hair danced wildly, showing an air of arrogance and defiance. You're the first person that I've beaten to my heart's content, so today, I'll spare your life. However, you'd better improve quickly. My ancestral blood is recovering every day, and the speed at which my strength increases is beyond your imagination. Otherwise, next time, you won't be able to withstand 3 punches from me. His figure charged backwards, and he entered into the deep pit, instantly disappearing into the black space. Amidst the smoke and dust, Ling Han also walked out with large strides. The surging qi and blood all over his body slowly calmed down, as if a roaming true dragon had returned to its nest, without the slightest hint of abnormality. His expression was solemn, and his eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. In the previous battle, it could be said that they were evenly matched. This made Ling Han very surprised, because his physical arts were completely not weaker than origin power, and the indestructible heaven scroll had also been cultivated to the level of body of diamond. Theoretically speaking, in this cultivation level, he should be invincible in close combat. Earth Dragon Bloodline. Ling Han recalled the previous battle. Jia Ming's physique was indeed not as sturdy as his, but his toughness was astonishing. He remembered clearly that when his fist landed on Jia Ming's face, Jia Ming's neck was actually stretched to several hundred meters, but it did not break. When the force was completely transformed, it immediately bounced back. This gave Jia Ming the qualification to fight Ling Han head-on. Relying on this kind of toughness to resist Ling Han's power, there was a feeling of using softness to overcome hardness. Of course, Ling Han's hardness had already surpassed his cultivation level, and it was something that Jia Ming could not overcome no matter what. Zhu Xian'er and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. Although they were very confident in Ling Han, Jia Ming's reputation was really too great. No matter how much they believed in Ling Han, it was only at this scene that they finally confirmed that Ling Han was indeed not weaker than Jia Ming. The strongest genius of the present age, Ling Han, finally had the qualification to become one of them. Chapter 701. Next time. Ling Han smiled faintly. Jia Ming retreated on his own, obviously because he didn't have the confidence to continue the battle. Otherwise, would he leave Wenren Qian and Zhu Xian'er behind? However, the two's clash just now was purely brute force, and if origin power and martial arts techniques were added, the situation would change again. Ling Han smiled confidently. No matter if it was comparing origin power or physical strength, he was invincible in the same tier. If his battle prowess was fully unleashed, who would he need to be afraid of when he grasped 3 mystical powers? Brother Ling is truly a genius, actually able to compare with the 5 great sects' most outstanding disciples. Qian Qian admires. Wenren Qian Qian said with a smile, her beautiful eyes shining. It wasn't that she had any special thoughts about Ling Han, but purely wanted to make friends with such a genius. Otherwise, with Jia Ming pursuing her so much, she only had to show a little bit of affection, and she'd be able to gain a helper. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Let's go, we should also go in." "Pa, you little heartless ones," actually leaving Uncle Rabbit behind again. A white shadow flashed past, and the rabbit was seen flying over from afar with a carrot in its mouth. It was unknown how it could still speak so fluently. Regarding the matter of the rabbit being able to speak, this was no longer a secret in the Restore Heaven Academy, and a few important figures in the academy explicitly said that no one was allowed to have any ideas about the rabbit, making the rabbit appear very mysterious. Thus, although it committed all sorts of evil and stole who knew how many spirit medicines, it remained unpunished, and no one sought it out to settle the score. This was obviously because the 5 great sects recognized the rabbit's identity. This was a special existence that could even avoid a calamity in the reckoning, so what if it stole some spirit medicines? Ling Han smiled, and said, "Isn't it because you're like a fish in water in the academy that we didn't call you?" "Pa, those little brats all ran away, and there's no water, so how can Uncle Rabbit be like a fish in water?" The rabbit was greatly displeased. "Alright, there's a historical site down there. Maybe there's some spiritual medicine there. I can borrow your dog nose to sniff it," Ling Han said. "Pei, you're the one with the nose of a dog, your whole family has the nose of a dog, ah." The rabbit got carried away with pride, and was bitten on the butt by Hunyo. It was so painful that it leaped up and fell directly into the deep pit. "Your Uncle Rabbit is in so much pain." Its screams came from the deep pit, but each word was farther than the last. Obviously, the speed at which it fell was shockingly fast. Ling Han pulled Zhu Xian'er's hand, and leapt towards the natural crater. Xiao, 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 the others also leaped down one after another. Wenren Qian lightly sighed. She had also recruited quite a few people, but at the crucial moment, a person's heart was revealed. There was basically no one who would face the enemy shoulder to shoulder with her, and she was disinclined to call those people back. She took a step forward and fell into the sinkhole. Ling Han held Zhu Xian'er in his arms, and this exquisite beauty was like an octopus, tightly hugging him instead. Her pretty face was filled with a dazed expression as she enjoyed his manly aura. This appearance was truly alluring. Ling Han almost couldn't hold back, wanting to bring Zhu Xian'er into the Black Tower and push down this alluring beauty. He forcefully held back, and after flying down for a very, very long distance, he seemed to have entered a patch of mud. His speed instantly slowed down, and then began to speed up again. At the same time, there was a bright field before his eyes. They actually entered a new world. Below was a plain, with verdant grass, towering trees, and in the distance, undulating mountain ridges. Pu, Piu, Piu, the people behind appeared one after another. As for Hunyo in front, she was still biting the rabbit's tail, while the rabbit ran madly, crying out in pain. This historical site is actually a special space. Everyone said. If it wasn't so, the space here could indeed be very large, but the environment definitely wouldn't be like this. Looking up from where they were, they could even see floating clouds and a sun hanging in the sky. However, as long as they sensed it, they would know that it wasn't a real sun. Instead, it was an inextinguishable fireball. It was just that it was quite far away from where they were, so it looked more like a sun. Impressive! Ling Han exclaimed in admiration. It wasn't that he hadn't entered special spaces, such as Devil Sky Mystery Realm and 12 Heaven Mystery Realms, which were all forcefully dug out a piece of heaven and earth and refined into a small world. However, it was the first time that a sun could be seen in a small world. No wonder Purple Moon Empire and the 5 great sects stopped fighting at the last minute and wanted to enter here first. Zhu Xian nodded. She reluctantly left Ling Han's embrace, her eyes charming like silk, making Ling Han's appetite stir, and he had the urge to eat her. Where should we go now? Li Zixian asked. Ling Han pointed at the fake sun, and said, follow the sun. Everyone nodded. Since there was no clear direction, it was better to follow the most obvious sign. After all, this wasn't a real sun, and it wouldn't be too ridiculously large. Rabbit and Hunyou also followed the team. Rabbit kept rubbing his butt. It hadn't been bitten for a long time, making him a bit complacent, and now he received a sufficient reminder. This place is so big. They flew close to the ground, and the speed was already astonishing, but after a long time, this place was still green grassland, and from time to time, mountain peaks appeared. Suddenly, the sound of fighting came from ahead, but it quickly disappeared. This was the path they had to pass. Ling Han and the others didn't change direction, but listening to the movements, they really couldn't distinguish the strength of the two sides in the battle. If they were to take a detour, it would be too careful. They soon arrived at the place where the battle took place. There were deep pits on the ground. Obviously, the battle before didn't last long, but it was very intense. Ling Han casually threw a punch, and a pit immediately appeared on the ground. Everyone paled in shock, because the pit that Ling Han punched was far smaller than those few pits. Although Ling Han only casually threw a punch, it could also be seen that the two sides in the battle before were definitely very powerful beings. If it's before us, it should be Jia Ming, Ling Han speculated. This person is quite conceited, but didn't prolong the battle here. Obviously, the opponent is very strong, most likely above him. Now, the enemy that Jia Ming encountered here should be chasing him, Wenren Qian said, following this line of thought. If Jia Ming can escape, then it'll be our turn to encounter this strong enemy. Li Fengyu shuddered. An existence that even Jia Ming had to run when he saw it, then he obviously didn't have the qualifications to fight. Fuck, you jinx. Rabbit spat. In front of them, there was an extremely large long worm swimming back at high speed. This long worm was close to 300 meters long, and looked a bit like a centipede. Its entire body was made up of segments, and each segment had a pair of legs. Half of its body was black, and the other half was white. Thus, if one looked at it from its left and right separately, the results would be completely opposite. With such a long body, its height naturally wasn't low either. Its legs and body were about 5 meters tall, though this was far from its body length. This long worm didn't have eyes, nose, or ears. Its entire head was a large, round mouth. Once it split open, the entire head split open, revealing circles of sharp teeth. Chapter 702. Thousand Worm. Ling Han frowned, revealing a strong expression of dread. Run, this big guy can't be fought. Why? Li Fengyu was truly a blabbermouth, still maintaining a strong curiosity at this time. Your sister, run. Ling Han opened his large hand of origin power, grabbing everyone except Wenren Qian and running, circling around to leave this place. Wenren Qian naturally ran as well. Even Ling Han and Jia Ming chose to run, so she wouldn't try to be brave. That long worm chased, its hundreds of legs striding in unison, surprisingly orderly and extremely fast, rapidly closing the distance with Ling Han and the others. You too. Ling Han opened his large hand of origin power again, grabbing Wenren Qian as well, and then unleashed the thunderclap 9th heaven. Blazing white lightning flashed on his body, and his figure instantly accelerated, rapidly pulling away from the long worm. His current speed could rival heaven-tier warriors, and even if he brought a few people, it was enough to reach the height of the deity transformation tier. Finally, that long worm finally gave up the chase and turned back, arriving at the initial ambush site, entering a hole and quickly disappearing. Only then did Ling Han stop in his tracks, and put everyone down. Brother-in-law, why are we running? Li Fengyu still couldn't forget this question. Ling Han sighed, and said, Thousand Worm never exists alone. Since one appeared, then there's another one. Li Fengyu followed up. Ling Han shook his head, and said, Then there's another nest. Pooh, Li Fengyu spurted out, and said, There's actually another nest of such disgusting worms. Thousand Worm, a nest of at least 1,000, or else why would it have such a name? That one just now already had the strength of a middle-stage deity transformation tier warrior, and this kind of demonic worm has extremely strong recovery ability, even harder to deal with than a high-stage deity transformation tier warrior. If another nest appeared, then it'd be fun, Ling Han said, shaking his head. Then let's go, let's go. The women's expressions were difficult. They obviously hated this kind of thing the most. Even Hunyo had a rare lack of wariness, mainly because that thing truly looked disgusting, making her unable to eat it. They bypassed the area and continued to chase the sun. Ong! The roar of a beast suddenly rang out in front of them, causing the ground to tremble. He's at the heaven tier, Ling Han said to the crowd. This place is really dangerous, everyone said. However, no one retreated. The more dangerous it was, the more amazing the opportunities would be. If they didn't have the resolve to face death and come back to life, then what was the point of risking their lives? They might as well go home and spend their days in mediocrity. However, no one would purposely send themselves to death, so they went around the place where the beast roar came from. There were shattering void tier elites that entered here earlier, but they actually didn't slaughter these vicious creatures in passing, Li Fengyu mumbled. Ha! These ferocious creatures sense the presence of a shattering void tier elite, would they still dare to breathe? Ling Han said with a smile. Just like how they could only take a detour when they discovered a heaven tier beast, these beasts could only tuck their tails between their legs when they discovered a shattering void tier elite. After a while, a strange grassland appeared in front of them. It was especially green and somewhat out of place with the surrounding environment. Li Fengyu just wanted to walk forward, but Ling Han reached out and grabbed him, forcibly dragging him back. Brother-in-law, why are you dragging me? He asked, puzzled. Ling Han sighed, and said, If you talk nonsense again, I'll throw you over. Li Fengyu finally became vigilant, and said, Is this grassland abnormal? You can try. Ling Han laughed loudly, and tossed him out. Save me. Li Fengyu hurriedly cried out, and hurriedly soared into the sky. And at this time, this patch of grass that was even darker in color also suddenly changed. Strand after strand of grass retracted into the ground, and the earth trembled slightly. Peng! A large hand blasted out, grabbing towards Li Fengyu. What the hell? Li Fengyu exclaimed, and hurriedly turned his palm into a saber, slashing towards that large hand. Although he had a big mouth, his talent really wasn't weak, or else he wouldn't have been able to enter the Restore Heaven Academy. With his full strength, the will of martial arts spread, and the saber chi blazed with vein-like patterns, extremely powerful. Peng, 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 but when these saber chi hit that large hand, it didn't cause any damage at all, and didn't even slow it down as it continued to grab towards Li Fengyu. Ling Han snorted, and used his fingers as a sword, slashing towards that large hand. Xiao, the sword ray shocked the sky. That large hand didn't dare to let itself be hit, and instead clenched into a fist, welcoming the sword ray. Peng, the will of martial art collided, and the sword ray shot out dazzlingly. Li Fengyu hurriedly ran back, shivering in fright. Hong, a colossus broke out of the ground. This was a 30-meter-tall giant, and its back was covered in extremely dark green grass. Obviously, this giant was lying on the ground before, and grass grew on its body. Stinky Rock Man, you dare ambush me! Li Fengyu yelled furiously, then turned around to look at Ling Han with a fawning expression. Young Master Han, destroy it! This was a rock man, and its aura was terrifying, because it was a deity transformation tier existence. Ling Han laughed loudly, summoned the rock man, and said, Big guy, this is your dish, get rid of it. When the rock spirit saw its kind, it instantly let out a roar, but it wasn't a roar of joy, but a provocation. Creatures raised by the heavens and the earth like them, the process of growth was a war of mutually devouring each other, and definitely didn't have the pleasant surprise of seeing a fellow townsman. Ong! The large rock man also roared, but its roar was much more shocking than the small rock spirit's. The roar formed a hurricane, blowing everyone's hair into a mess. The rock spirit instantly shriveled and shrunk behind Ling Han's back, whimpering like a frightened puppy. Earlier, it excitedly wanted to devour the other party, but when the other party showed its might, it suddenly discovered that the other party was much fiercer than it. Ling Han laughed loudly. The rock spirit was becoming more and more human-like. Did this guy still look like a rock spirit now? It was practically a puppy, wagging its tail and begging for pity, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. However, the Black Tower already condensed the first spirit stone, which was refined by the rock spirit. With 2 more, this big guy could advance into the spiritual infant tier. The large rock man stared at Ling Han, or to be precise, the rock spirit behind Ling Han was merely blocked by Ling Han. It opened its mouth, and if it had saliva, it would definitely be dripping out by now. For it, the rock spirit was also a feast. It wouldn't say any superfluous words, and immediately pounced towards Ling Han. In its eyes, Ling Han was only an ant, and it would crush him without hesitation. Then, it would swallow the rock spirit and turn it into a cornerstone for it to step onto a higher cultivation level. The rock spirit obviously couldn't be this large rock man's match, so Ling Han attacked and took on this powerful opponent. Chapter 703. Ling Han was cultivating in his room, his mind calm. He was progressing further and further on the path of combining 6 techniques into one, and added with the fact that he had money in his hands, he could buy enough alchemical pills. His power was currently increasing at an astonishing rate. At most half a year, or even less, he would be able to reach the limit of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. He revealed an attentive expression, but his hair immediately stood on end, because there was actually another person who had soundlessly appeared in the courtyard. This person was dressed in black, and his face was also covered with a veil. There was even a cloak draped over his body, and even his figure could not be seen. Was this another assassin from the Dark Night Hall? However, the Dark Night Hall was actually so bold, and even dared to make a move in the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Die, the black-robed man said with a cold humph and suddenly moved, striking out in Ling Han's direction. Why was his speed so slow? Ling Han could clearly feel that there were even 3 mountains and rivers moving behind this person, but the might of this strike was at most 22 stars of Shattering Void tier, 23 stars of Shattering Void tier, completely inconsistent with the cultivation level of the high extreme of the mountain river tier. He leaped and dodged this strike. Xiao, the black-robed man pursued, and once again struck out a palm strike at Ling Han. The might of this strike was much stronger, reaching the level of 25 stars of Shattering Void tier. It was only in the mountain river tier, so it was really too easy for him to raise his battle prowess by 2 stars of the Shattering Void tier. It was something that could be done with a single thought. Ling Han frowned, and hurriedly flashed again, fleeing out of the courtyard. The black-robed man chased after him, and continued to strike, but he did not use the destructive power of the mountain river tier. He was merely driving Ling Han away. Of the 2, one chased, and one fled. Their speed was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, they had left the northern institution, heading west. Ling Han instantly understood that the other party wanted to chase him to the western institution. In the Scarlet Heaven Academy, the 4 great institutions were like fire and water, and filled with intense competition. If a student of the northern institution appeared in the western institution, what would the result be? He would be beaten to a horrible state. The other party wanted to borrow the strength of the whole western institution to give him a good time. This person was definitely not a member of the Dark Night Hall. Otherwise, how could he have done such an unnecessary thing? Moreover, If he really was a member of the Dark Knight Hall, how could he have possibly entered into the Scarlet Heaven Academy? He should have long since been killed, right? But a black-robed man of unknown origins was practically acting violently in public. What did this mean? The higher-ups of the academy definitely knew the identity of this person, but did not move to stop him, which meant that they were wary of the background behind him. Then there could only be one person. Zhao Luan. This person had to be Zhao Luan's subordinate, and the higher-ups of the academy also knew that the other party would not act recklessly. Thus, they turned a blind eye to it. After all, Zhao Luan was the only son of the great General Zhao, so who would dare not give him face? Pang! The black-robed man suddenly dealt a heavy blow. With a single blow, Ling Han was instantly sent flying, and crashed heavily into a wall of the academy. Who is it? This was the dormitory of the Shattering Void Tier Division of the Western Institution. Immediately, a great many people ran out, and discovered Ling Han among the ruins. And the black-robed man had long since flashed, and disappeared without a trace. Ling Han stood up. That black-robed man's last move had not been very forceful. It was just that the attack had been too fast, and he had no way of dodging. Naturally, it was completely impossible for him to be injured. Someone from the Northern Institution. It's Ling Han. The number one among the new students this year. Fuck, does he think that just because his battle prowess has surpassed 20 stars, he can come to our Western Institution and behave atrociously? Hit him. There were as many as 2,000 students in the entire Shattering Void Tier Division of the Western Institution, and each of them had entered the academy for more than 5 years. No matter how one looked at it, their battle prowess had all reached 15 stars. With so many people added together, which Shattering Void Tier cultivator would not cower in fear? Furthermore, it was Ling Han who had barged into the Western Institution, so he deserved to be beaten up. Who could he reason with? Forced? Who had forced you to become a black-robed man? What kind of joke was that? Wouldn't anyone who wore a set of black robes be a black-robed man? Ling Han smirked coldly in his mind. He knew that Zhao Luan was trying to disgust him. The latter did not dare to kill him in the academy, but the son of the great General Zhao could do as he pleased. He just wanted to make you feel displeased. So what? If he was no match for him, then he would definitely be beaten up violently. If by any chance he could win, then he would similarly provoke the anger of the Mountain River Tier students of the Western Institution. Aren't you being too arrogant, coming all the way to the Western Institution to flaunt your prowess? Ling Han recalled what Shui Yanyu had said. Zhao Luan was like a poisonous snake. That was indeed a very appropriate comment. Hong, a few dozen people immediately charged over. Now that they had the advantage in numbers, they naturally did not fear Ling Han in the slightest. Ling Han stretched out a hand, and grabbed one of them, using him as a shield. He smiled, and said, "Everyone, I accidentally walked the wrong way. I'm sorry, but I'll leave now. Let's part on good terms, shall we?" Humph, barging into our Western Institution, and you still want to swagger and leave as if nothing happened? Ling Han, aren't you being too arrogant? Can you boast now? Being able to barge into our Western Institution alone, and then leave unscathed? In your dreams. They moved, but because they had a shield, they naturally had many misgivings. If you're so capable, don't take hostages. That's right, we'll fight fair and square. They tried to provoke him. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. Hundreds or even thousands of you ganged up on me, and this could be considered fair and square. However, he was really not afraid. Since you all insist on fighting, then let's fight. Ling Han casually tossed the hostage in his hands to one side. What did he have to fear? Ha, beat him up. A few dozen people once again charged forward, and even more people surrounded and watched the battle. Even if a shattering void tier cultivator could casually strike from over 30 meters away, there were still too many people after all, and it was definitely impossible for them to attack at the same time. Ling Han's right fist bulged, and shot out. Pang! His power was really too strong, and a single strike was like a crushing mountain. Instantly, over a dozen people were sent flying, and directly fainted. Go, I don't believe that with so many of us, we can't take care of him. People surged towards Ling Han like an ocean, but Ling Han only needed to shoot out a punch, and over a dozen people would be sent flying like straw. They would faint from a single strike, and immediately lose their ability to battle. After a dozen punches, over 200 people had collapsed on the scene. There were still close to 1,800 people from the Western institutions still standing, but that would only be a matter of a few hundred more punches. This was too freakish. How could a shattering void tier cultivator be this strong? They were all humans, so why was the gap between them so huge? Should they also squeeze into some small world to gain some experience? Is there anyone else? Ling Han asked calmly, his eyes sweeping over the remaining 1,800 people. When his eyes swept over them, everyone involuntarily lowered their eyes, not daring to meet his gaze. He obviously did not possess the king's chi, so why did he possess such a powerful oppressive force? Go, we definitely can't let him leave so easily. Otherwise, where will the face of our Western institution be? Keep him here at all costs. Chapter 704. However, the rock spirit was also becoming more and more obedient. Otherwise, this guy definitely would have run off with the heart of stone in its mouth, and wouldn't look at him with a fawning expression, waiting for his agreement. Brother Ling, your puppet is truly human-like, not like a cold puppet at all, Wenren Qian said sincerely. The rock spirit was instantly displeased, and roared at Wenren Qian. Who was a puppet? It was a majestic spirit of heaven and earth, a being of the 5 elements, favored by heaven and earth. Ling Han laughed and put the rock spirit into the black tower, letting it refine the heart of stone and quickly increase its tier. In fact, if he directly subdued the large rock spirit from before, the effect would definitely be better, since it was in the deity transformation tier. However, firstly, Ling Han didn't want to use the black tower in public, and secondly, he was a person who valued relationships. Since the rock spirit pledged allegiance to him, he would think of a way to help it increase its strength, and not abandon the original one when he saw a stronger one. The rock spirit should also know this, which was why it was more loyal to him. Yeah, it's quite vivid, Ling Han said with a smile, but didn't say that he was also a rock spirit. Qian always thought Brother Ling was famous for sword arts, but didn't expect archery to be even more amazing. That arrow even killed a deity transformation tier rock spirit, such power is truly unimaginable, Wenren Qian praised. Ha, Lady Wenren doesn't need to flatter me. Ling Han waved his hand. She was also a prodigy, and her talent shouldn't be inferior to Zhu Xian'er's. He paused, then said, let's go, we should continue on our way. They all nodded and stepped forward. This region was astonishingly large, as if one would never be able to reach the end of it. However, after half a day, the sun in the sky rapidly disappeared and was replaced by a moon that emitted a gentle light. The moon was as cool as water. Everyone clicked their tongues in wonder. The master of the ruins really spent effort and thought, actually imitating the environment here to be so similar to the outside world. In the sky, there were even many stars dotting it. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth. Before, it was the sun, so he didn't dare to stare for too long, as it would burn his eyes blind. However, the stars and the moon were different. The destructive power of light was limited, and he could completely withstand it. After a while, his expression changed and he said, those are real stars, completely the same as the ones in the outside world. What? Everyone's expressions changed. The so-called stars are all meteorites that usually contain high-grade rare metals, which is why they shine in the sky, Wenren Qian said. Ling Han nodded and said, there's a strange suction force at the top of the sky that's holding the meteorite metal in place. That's why we're stuck in the starry sky. The sun and moon, on the other hand, are different. Driven by the power of the world, they have their own orbits. Rabbit said, actually, these stars are only a few thousand miles away from us. If it weren't for the existence of the astral wind layer, even flower blossom tear cultivators could easily reach the end of the universe. But it's precisely because of the existence of the astral wind layer that even shattering void tear elites don't dare to barge in forcefully, and can only. Ling Han continued, making a slashing motion towards the sky. The first step of splitting open the skies was to slash open the astral wind layer, or else one couldn't even reach the universe, so how could they talk about splitting open the skies? Shattering void tear cultivators are too strong, and their attacks can pass through the astral wind layer and strike down the stars in the universe, but when the stars pass through the astral wind layer, most of them will be worn away, and only a few of them can fall to the ground, Rabbit continued. Brat, are you wrong? Those stars can't possibly be exactly the same as the outside world. Ling Han shook his head, and said, I definitely can't be wrong. He thought for a moment, and said, then there's only one possibility, which is that there's a supreme being that can forcibly break through the astral wind layer and pluck down those stars intact. Pluck the stars and capture the moon, what kind of ability is that? Wenren Qian couldn't help but be stunned. This is something that even shattering void tear elites can't do. Ling Han nodded. Shattering void tear elites could shake down the stars in the sky. After all, that was only because of the distance and the protection of the astral wind layer, but to break through the astral wind layer and pluck the stars back, the difficulty was on a completely different level. He couldn't help but shiver inwardly. An ancient dynasty once wanted to split open the skies, but ultimately failed, leaving behind 4 treasure vaults. Could this historical site belong to that ancient dynasty? Although they failed to split open the skies back then, breaking through the astral wind layer shouldn't be a problem, so plucking some intact stars was within reason. If that was really the case, Purple Moon Empire and the 5 great sects being so anxious was also reasonable. This was a dynasty that had the qualifications to split open the skies. It's really more and more tempting, Ling Han said with a smile. Everyone sat down. Ling Han took out the ingredients, and everyone began to prepare dinner. Walking in such a dangerous place, they had to maintain their best state at all times, or else they might die of regret. Time was indeed precious, but they definitely couldn't advance rashly. Wenren Qian and Li Fengyu obviously also prepared dry rations, but smelling the aroma of the food cooked by Ling Han and the others, they couldn't help but feel appetites. After tasting their food, they instantly threw their own ingredients to the side and forced themselves to come over to beg for food. Huh, where's the meat I put here? Li Fengyu was baffled. He just finished roasting a piece of meat and planned to roast another for his sister to eat, but unexpectedly, it suddenly disappeared. His gaze swept over, stopping on the rabbit, and he said, Uncle Rabbit, did you steal to eat? The rabbit tilted its head, and said disdainfully, Pay, would Uncle Rabbit steal to eat your things? Then what's with your mouth chewing and chewing? Uncle Rabbit naturally likes to gossip, can't I? The oil's flowing out. Nonsense, Uncle Rabbit is a vegetarian. You damned rabbit, a thief who steals. Li Fengyu was driven mad. This shameless rabbit was lazy and didn't go roast, stealing chickens and dogs. Too hateful. The rabbit ignored him, but its ruby-like eyeballs swiveled wildly. With its personality of not willing to suffer losses, it obviously wanted to retaliate against Li Fengyu's big mouth. Because the others were now watching it vigilantly, it greatly increased the difficulty of stealing chickens and dogs. Huh, where's the soup I put here? Ling Han was also surprised, then said to the rabbit, Did you do it? I'm innocent, you guys lost something and looked for Uncle Rabbit. Is Uncle Rabbit this kind of rabbit? The rabbit jumped up, feeling wronged. Yes. Everyone nodded. Ha, the bowl I put here is also gone, Zhu Xian'er said strangely. None of Uncle Rabbit's business. The rabbit hurriedly raised its paw consciously. It really isn't a rabbit. Ling Han shook his head. His divine sense was always locked onto the rabbit, and if it had any unusual movements, it probably wouldn't escape his divine sense. After all, his divine sense was at the level of heaven tier, even if it was only a sliver. Then who was it? Everyone was curious. Hunyo suddenly giggled, reached out to grab a snow-white ball, and said, "Let's roast it and eat." Chapter 705. What Hunyo grabbed in her hand was a furry little thing that looked a bit like a bamboo rat, but the color was different. It had a chubby body, short limbs, and a long tail. If this guy was black, it would probably look terrifying, but with pure white fur, pink little claws, and a pair of unusually large eyes that took up almost a third of its face, this guy looked very silly and adorable. The little guy was struggling desperately, wanting to break free from Hunyo's hand, but its limbs were too short, and it couldn't do anything, making it squeak anxiously. Hunyo started drooling, and said, "Do you roast it or cook it?" "Roasted it's delicious, boiled it's delicious." "Ai, why is there only one, making Nyo so troubled, can't eat it?" Zhu Xian'er, Wenren Qian, and Li Zixian called out at the same time. Such a cute little thing, who could bear to lose it? "Why?" Hunyo said blankly, looking at everyone with a vigilant gaze. "You guys want to steal it?" "Humph, Nyo isn't a vegetarian." "If you want to fight, I'll keep you company." Ling Han was curious, and said, "Could this little guy be the thief just now?" "Wow, actually daring to frame your Uncle Rabbit, slaughter it and eat it." The rabbit shouted aggressively. "Damn rabbit, if you talk nonsense again, believe it or not, I'll kill you first." Wenren Qian threatened. "Okay, Nyo wants to eat rabbit meat." Hunyo immediately stared at the rabbit. Ling Han waved his hand, and had Hunyo bring the little thing over. He turned the plump and round thing over and over, making the little thing very bashful. It even used its little claws to cover the space between its legs. Pooh! It actually spat out a small piece of metal, completely dark blue and emitting a sparkling color. It held the piece of metal with its two little front claws and stared eagerly at Ling Han, as if fawning on him. "It's all your saliva, you're not particular about giving it away," Ling Han said with a smile, but his expression immediately changed. "This is 8th tier rare metal, jade sea blue gold." Everyone was astonished. A fat rat actually spat out a piece of 8th tier rare metal. This was very shocking. "Huh? Could this be a gold-seeking rat?" Rabbit exclaimed in shock. Legend has it that these creatures have a special ability to sense precious metals. They can even sense metals buried several kilometers underground. Gold-seeking rat. Everyone shook their heads, indicating that they had never heard of this name. "Rabbit, are you making this up?" Zhu Xian'er said with a smile. "Pa, don't think that you can accuse Uncle Rabbit just because you're a little prettier." Rabbit stomped its feet. "You guys haven't heard of it because there are pitifully few gold-seeking rats. Although they don't have great power, their numbers are definitely rarer than true dragons and phoenixes. You could say that this is a priceless treasure even in the god realm." Everyone was moved. This fat and round guy was actually tall, rich and handsome. Meanwhile, the gold-seeking rat looked at Ling Han with a fawning expression. It sensed great fear from Hunyo's body. It was really like a mouse encountering a cat, and even its reaction was not as sensitive. Otherwise, with its speed, how could an ordinary person be able to catch it? However, this human could subdue Hunyo, so it obviously flattered him. Whether it could escape the fate of being grilled on the grill and boiled in the pot was up to Ling Han. It held the jade sea blue gold with its two small claws, cupping it as if offering a gift. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. He put down the gold-seeking rat, took the jade sea blue gold, and casually wiped away the saliva left by this little guy. "Zilu, the large white rat hurriedly fled. Although it had a fat and round appearance, as if it would pant after a few steps, its speed was shockingly fast, disappearing in an instant, ridiculously fast. Everyone was stunned for a moment, then realized that they were tricked by a rat. Who would have thought that it looked stupid and adorable in Hunyo's hands, but was nimble to this extent? It's practically a nimble damn fatty. Ling Han thought of Ma Duobao, also a damn fatty, both extremely nimble. Nyo's grilled meat. Hunyo screamed. She just decided how to eat it, but the food ran away. Ling Han laughed, and said, "This large white rat has great use. If we catch it next time, keep it and raise it." Hunyo pouted. She really wanted to eat it, but what to do? Her gaze was fixed on the rabbit, and her large eyes were shining. The rabbit couldn't help but cover its butt, and exclaimed, "Little girl, what are you trying to do? I'm warning you, don't hit Uncle Rabbit's master." It screamed, already having its butt bitten by Hunyo. Everyone continued to eat, and after a while, Hunyo suddenly laughed loudly and raised both hands, holding a fat and round large white rat. If it wasn't that gold-seeking rat, who else could it be? This time, it even showed its true form. This large white rat's claws were still holding a piece of meat, and one side of its mouth was bulging, obviously stuffed in too much food. It looked at everyone with an innocent gaze, adorably stupid. Everyone couldn't help but smile, and couldn't help but laugh. I've seen stupid, but stupid to this extent, this gold-seeking rat can be considered a weirdo. Humans die for wealth, and birds die for food, truly fitting. This is definitely a gluttonous rat. Previously, it ran over because it smelled the aroma, and after being caught once, it still didn't realize and fell at the same place twice. Hearing everyone's words, the large white rat shyly covered its eyes with its little claws, as if its face was about to turn red. Ling Han laughed loudly, grabbed the large white rat again, and said, "Fatty, how about following me in the future? I'll have as much good wine and food as I want, and you, use your ability to find rare metals for me." The large white rat squeaked and danced as if in protest. "Didn't I just eat a few pieces of your meat, and you want this rat to work for me? You dare not agree." Hunyo came over, revealing her ferocious look. The large white rat was immediately scared stiff, its tail straightening, its limbs standing straight, and its entire body stiffening. It actually fainted from fright. Pooh, everyone laughed loudly. This rat was too funny. Say it was as timid as a rat, but it actually came to steal food twice in a row. Say it was extremely daring, but it was fainted by Hunyo, its acting cute rating was practically 5 stars. Shio, but at this moment, this large white rat took advantage of Ling Han's carelessness and slipped away like a wisp of smoke. Fuck. The smiles on everyone's faces instantly froze. They were actually tricked by this large white rat again. Ling Han took out a large amount of food, and said, "I don't believe it, this fatty will definitely appear again." Everyone shook their heads. No matter how gluttonous that gold-seeking rat was, it wouldn't make the same mistake 3 times, right? Sure enough, a night passed, and the large white rat didn't appear again. In the early morning, the change between day and night was almost completed in an instant. The stars and moon that filled the sky disappeared at the same time, and that large fireball jumped into the air. Although Ling Han couldn't forget that gold-seeking rat, he didn't have time to waste now, so he continued to advance with everyone. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 706. On this day, they spent it in hiding. Although there weren't many beasts here, each one was extremely powerful, at least in the deity transformation tier, and heaven tier beasts would appear at every turn, so powerful that people could only detour. Maybe there were shattering void tier beasts, but they just didn't show any traces. Because they kept hiding and detouring, they didn't catch up much in a day. The sun set, the moon rose again, and everyone stopped again to rest. Ha, Nyo caught it again. Hunyo suddenly shouted happily, holding a white and chubby mouse in her hand. This large white mouse looked at everyone pitifully, as if reflecting on why it was so gluttonous, walking right into a trap again. Ling Han laughed loudly, and after receiving the gold-seeking mouse, he directly stored it into the Black Tower, then separated a divine sense to enter. Once the gold-seeking mouse was free, it obviously fled immediately, sniffing with its little nose, and then greedily looking at the endless medicinal fields in the Black Tower. It actually fed on metal, and the more precious the metal, the more powerful it could be. However, this one was different. It did eat rare metal, which could make it powerful, but it was also gluttonous, liked to eat spirit medicine, and now fell in love with barbecue, chicken soup, and so on. With so many spirit medicines, it wanted to eat to its heart's content. However, just as it moved, it discovered that it had shockingly fallen into the human's hand. "Fatty, you won't be able to escape from me," Ling Han said with a smile. Then, he loosened his grip, and said, "Keep running." The gold-seeking mouse had strong tenacity, and immediately broke into a run again, determined to eat everything here to mock this human. However, after a while, it once again fell into Ling Han's hand. It was confused. This human's speed was clearly not as fast as it, and it also had the innate ability to burrow into the earth. Because it could feed on metal, its teeth were also top-notch, breaking whatever it bit. With its sharp teeth to open a path, it should be successful in every endeavor. Run again. This time, it hurriedly dug downwards, wanting to escape into the earth. However, after digging for at least a few dozen kilometers, a human face suddenly appeared in front of it. Who else could it be but that man? This time, it was really frightened. Its tail straightened, and with a smack, it turned over and lay down, its big white belly facing the sky, looking as if it was scared to death. "I'm not a cute guy like you. Do you think I'll be fooled by you?" Ling Han laughed loudly. He picked up the gold-seeking rat by its tail and said, "Don't pretend to be dead. This place is so big, and there are spirit herbs growing everywhere. There are also all kinds of demonic beasts. The meat is delicious." He paused for a moment and patiently said, "How about it? As long as you follow me, you'll be able to eat spirit medicine and eat your fill." Creak the fat rat came to life in an instant. It stood upright on its two hind legs and squeaked at Ling Han as if it was bargaining. "I don't understand what you're saying, but you just need to nod your head. Are you willing to follow me?" Ling Han's voice was like that of a devil's temptation. The fat rat looked like it was struggling, and finally clenched its little paws in submission. "Okay, you're my person from now on, my rat. I'll give you a name. Since you're so fat and very similar to a certain person, if I don't take the opportunity to tease you, it'd be too unreasonable." Ling Han thought. "From now on, you'll be called by Duo Bao, nicknames Fatty, Xiao Bai." The gold-seeking rat squeaked in protest. It wasn't fat, this was called sensual. Ling Han brought the gold-seeking rat outside, and said with a smile, "The little guy is in our group now. He's called by Duo Bao, nicknames Fatty and Xiao Bai." Zhu Xian immediately burst into laughter. She knew that Ling Han had a bad taste, but she didn't know what kind of expression Ma Duo Bao would have when he met this gold-seeking rat in the future. Brother Ling is really lucky to be able to obtain a treasure like the gold-seeking rat, Wenren Qian sighed. Wenren Qian sighed. This was attracted by Ling Han's food, caught by Hunyo, and subdued by Ling Han. How could she have the nerve to say she wanted a share of the benefits? Ling Han smiled. His luck in this life was indeed good, and obtaining 3 mystical powers was proof. In reality, his luck in the last life should also be good to run into the Black Tower. The level of this divine tool couldn't be estimated. The gold-seeking rat climbed onto Ling Han's shoulder, squeaking and gesticulating, meaning that it ate secretly just now and didn't eat to its heart's content. Now it should let it eat to its heart's content. Ling Han casually brought food to feed this fatty, and Hunyo still couldn't hide her gluttony, drooling as she stared at the gold-seeking rat, making the gold-seeking rat break out in a cold sweat as it ate. This little human's body seemed to hide a terrifying existence, giving it a psychological shadow and deeply hurting the rat baby's fragile heart. "This should just be a young rat," the rabbit said. "Why do you say that?" everyone asked. Hunyo also said, Yeah, it's already so fat, completely able to eat, how could it be small? An adult gold-seeking rat's fur will be golden, and it's only white when it's young," the rabbit explained. The gold-seeking rat's ability to find rare metals is related to its age. The older it is, the higher the grade of the metal it can find. So it was still a little guy, no wonder it was so gluttonous, and fell for it again and again. It couldn't be helped, it was young and ignorant. Zhu Xian'er's motherly instincts were aroused, and she carried the gold-seeking rat over, saying, "I wonder where Xiao Bai's parents went, actually leaving such a little baby behind." Hunyo drooled, and said, There's 2 big ones, Nyo isn't greedy at all." "Ha, its parents might have died long ago," the rabbit said. Gold-seeking rats are very special, and are oviparous. If the eggs laid don't have suitable conditions, it wouldn't be strange if they didn't hatch in 100,000 years, or a million years. This made Hunyo very disappointed, and her hope of changing to a new taste was dashed. After eating and drinking their fill, everyone rested and cultivated a bit to get rid of the day's exhaustion, preparing for the battle they might encounter tomorrow. The gold-seeking rat was stupid and adorable as expected. When it slept, it lay on its back and made loud snoring noises. It was extremely noisy, and only after being thrown into the Black Tower by Ling Han did everyone get some quiet space. The next day, everyone set out on their way. Ling Han also released the gold-seeking rat so that it could find rare metals. Needless to say, this fatty really wasn't for show. In just a short day, it brought 3 pieces of rare metals for Ling Han. 1 was 4th tier, and 2 were 5th tier. Although they weren't that precious, they were obtained for free. Another night passed, and the day arrived as scheduled. This was already the 4th day since they entered here. As they walked, they heard a cry, and a dark cloud appeared in the sky, quickly covering them. Everyone raised their heads and discovered that it wasn't a dark cloud, but a giant condor. Its entire body was dark green, featherless, and was covered entirely in scales like green iron armor, emitting a cold chill. Everyone's hair stood on end, because this was a supreme existence of the shattering void tier, and with a glare, it could kill them several hundred times. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 707. Shattered tortoise, in the eyes of ordinary creatures, was synonymous with powerful defense. Even ferocious tigers and lions couldn't do anything to a tortoise's shell. And after entering the level of demonic beasts, the defense of tortoises increased once again. The pinnacle of demonic beasts was divine beasts, so their defense was naturally even more astonishing. Zhong Hai was born with a special talent, possessing a sliver of the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, Black Tortoise. This was reflected in his defense. The area on his back was known as the God's Domain, because only immortals could break it. On the stage, all the spectators were dumbfounded. Even many elites of the Mountain River tier and Sun Moon tier couldn't believe it. Ling Han was obviously only in the Shattering Void tier, so how could his battle prowess be so powerful? On the high stage, the important figures of Jade Drop and Eternity Sky Majestic Empire even tried to sense whether Ling Han had borrowed the power of the nation, but to their disappointment, there were no signs of external power on Ling Han. Moreover, the totem of the empire, the 9 mountain peaks, did not have Ling Han's name on them. Without a name on the totem, it was impossible to draw power of the nation. This was a principle that everyone knew. His own battle prowess could also be so strong. This caused a great many important figures to be surprised. Because the Shattering Void tier had not yet crossed into the immortal level, the influence would not be too great. Thus, even a supreme genius would only require himself to reach 20 stars of battle prowess. There was no need to fight to the death at this step. After all, the path of martial arts was too long. Moreover, even if you cultivated the Shattering Void tier to perfection, how many more stars of ability could you surpass your own cultivation level? I could similarly cultivate to perfection in the Mountain River tier and the Sun Moon tier, so wouldn't the increase in battle prowess be even stronger? It was precisely because it was too difficult to surpass one's cultivation level in the immortal level that pursuing cultivation level was the way of the king. Peng Zhonghai fell off the tournament stage, releasing a shrill scream. This tortoise shell was a part of his body, and now that it had been forcefully shattered, it naturally caused him great pain. However, his previous victory had been too despicable. Thus, seeing him in such a miserable state now, everyone instead felt a kind of pleasure, feeling that their hatred had been vented. The rankings have been decided. In this competition among the three empires, the Chaotic Imperial Court comes first, the Jade Drop Majestic Empire comes second, and the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire comes third. The ninth king's voice rang out from the high platform, announcing the final result. Ling Han, Yi Qingyun, and the other contestants all received rewards. Each of them was given 100 true origin stones. This was not a small amount of wealth. It was only a battle, and it could be said to be a heavy reward. Ling Han was just about to leave with the left minister when he saw a palace maid catch up to them. She first curtsied, then said, "By the orders of Her Imperial Majesty, Ling Han is summoned for an audience." The left minister was slightly startled, and hurriedly answered respectfully, "Yes." Meanwhile, Xiang Qingyun was about to go mad with jealousy. This lowly commoner of a small world actually received an audience with the Empress. What kind of luck was that? Even he was only able to catch a glimpse of the Empress from afar because he was following the left minister. This was a pride that belonged to him, but now? This Shattering Void tier brat was actually able to come into close contact with the Empress, and instantly trampled his pride onto the ground. He was filled with hatred. Why had he brought Ling Han back in the first place? It would have been better to just kill him directly, and just casually install a puppet emperor. But now, he could only feel regret, and did not dare to do anything. The person that Her Imperial Majesty the Empress wanted to see, would you dare to stop him? Ling Han followed that palace maid, and walked into the depths of the Imperial Palace. It was incredibly quiet here. Aside from the patrolling guards, there was no one else. Of course, the guards were all women, and they were all in teams of 10, led by an elite in the consummate level of the Mountain River tier. The team members were also in the Mountain River tier. However, after that palace maid led Ling Han to the entrance of a side palace hall. It was completely forged from pink crystal, and looked like a beautiful gemstone. This palace maid knelt at the entrance, and said, "Reporting to Your Imperial Majesty, I've brought Ling Han here." Announce. A dignified voice traveled out from inside, yet there was an incredible charm hidden within it. It was as sweet as honey, and would make anyone who heard it feel incredibly comfortable. The palace maid nodded at Ling Han, and walked into the palace hall. Ling Han followed in as well. He acutely discovered that there was an imperial guard hidden behind every thick stone pillar that was at least 3 meters wide. Their auras were unfathomable, or at least they were not ones that he could detect clearly. There were a total of 18 such pillars, and they extended all the way to the bottom of the palace hall. There was an imperial throne there, and a woman dressed in a dragon robe was seated high on it. However, there was divine light flickering around her body, and her specific appearance could not be seen clearly. However, even if it was incomparably hazy, there was still a kind of charm that reached right into one's bones, and would make one's heart melt. The reputation of the greatest beauty in the world was well deserved. She merely sat there, and there was an irresistible charm about her. Ling Han sighed, but had no choice but to kneel on one knee, and said, "Ling Han pays his respects to Your Imperial Majesty." This was an elite at the peak stage of the consummate level of the heavenly body tier, and she herself was more likely to be a 5-star genius. Added with power of the nation, if not in the eternal river tier, at least in the heavenly body tier, she should be invincible. Towards this kind of elite, it was only right to show respect. Empress Yuan Xing's eyes swept over him, and Ling Han suddenly felt as if he had been seen through from inside out. It was as if he could not hide any secrets in front of her. It has been very difficult for you to come from a small world by opening the sky, she said, with a sliver of praise. Ling Han suddenly felt a rush of joy, but his heart immediately clenched. Why was it that she had only praised him, and he felt an urge to die for her? The charm of this empress was too frightening. She had clearly not used any cultivation technique, and only a single sentence, and added with the fact that her own appearance, bearing, and even appearance were all obscured, she had already caused him to be completely intoxicated. No wonder even the two emperors of the heavenly body tier were enchanted by her. Indeed, this kind of charm was really too hard to resist. Thank you for your praise, Your Majesty, Ling Han said solemnly. His eyes were lowered, and he did not dare to take another look. This empress was a source of calamity, and her charm was much greater than Shui Yenyu's and Zhu Xian's. At least as far as Ling Han knew, the only one that could rival or even surpass her in terms of bearing was that former imperial empress of the Rock Palace. However, the temperament of these two women was completely different. Though the tone of the one from the Rock Palace was gentle, it was elegant and distant, causing others to only feel reverence, and not dare to have any wild thoughts. But though the tone of this empress in front of him was clear and cold, it was like sweet poison, making one unable to stop even if they wanted to. They were willing to be like moths flying into a flame, and would not regret it even if they died. This should also have something to do with the cultivation technique that this empress cultivated. Otherwise, it was definitely impossible for her to be so enchanting and seductive. Ling Han did not think that with his current cultivation level, he would be able to resist the charm of this empress for long. Thus, it was better not to act rashly, lest his mind succumb to her charms and be unable to extricate himself. You have turned the tide for our empire, and won 1,000 slots to enter into the heavenly sea mystery realm. Thus, I will make an exception, and grant you a slot to enter, Empress Yuan Xing said. Thank you, Your Imperial Majesty. This reward was within Ling Han's expectations. Furthermore, would such a powerful figure like the Empress specially summon him just to personally announce this kind of news? Thinking about it, the battle prowess that he had displayed was too astonishing, and that was why Empress Yuan Xing wanted to observe him at a close distance. Chapter 708. Peng, the earth split open, and a gigantic demonic beast emerged. It was shaped like a lion, with a length of 30 meters and a height of 15 meters. Its entire body was covered with black scales, making it look like a pangolin. However, its tail was completely different. It was long, and the tip was like a corn cob, emitting a faint fragrance like a peerless treasured medicine. And what made everyone familiar was that the tail, why did it look like that spirit medicine? Ling Han's expression changed drastically. Previously, it wasn't a treasured medicine at all, but a bait released by this beast. It deliberately let its tail change slowly, as if a treasured medicine was slowly maturing, with the goal of gathering the largest number of prey so that it could catch them all in one fell swoop. This could also explain why those shattering void tier elites didn't pay attention to this treasured medicine when they passed by, because they didn't notice it at all. This was a powerful shattering void tier existence, and here, it was invincible. The 7 heaven tier elites all stopped fighting, and seeing this scene, everyone naturally reacted. However, being targeted by a shattering void tier elite and turned into prey, how could they escape? Ong! This beast let out a loud roar. Hung, the sound wave was like a tsunami. Peng, 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 everything within a radius of a few miles was shattered. The 7 heaven tier elites were obviously the first to bear the brunt, all of them having their skin broken and bones cracked, barely having a breath left. Fortunately, it was precisely because the 7 heaven-tier elites started fighting that the others retreated far away to avoid the brunt of the attack, so they were spared from this disaster. Even so, everyone's arms and legs were either broken or broken. It was just that they weren't shattered into pieces by the shockwave. The might of the shattering void tier was extremely powerful, and a single attack could cut down stars. Fortunately, Ling Han and the others retreated even further and were almost not affected, but they were still pressured by the shattering void tier's aura until their faces turned pale, and even breathing was difficult. Everyone's expression changed. How could they block this? A shattering void tier beast targeted them, treating them as prey. Run. Everyone fled in all directions almost in an instant. That monstrous beast also moved. First, it sucked in and swallowed all 7 heaven-tier warriors into its mouth. After chewing a few times, it swallowed them into its stomach, and then began a massacre. Although everyone fled in different directions, how fast was the shattering void tier's speed? When it finished eating all the prey, in the east, south, and west directions, the people who fled towards the north only managed to escape over 100 miles away at most. Naturally, they were Ling Han and the others. The Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing were also among them, and there were also super geniuses like Yao Huiyu and Jia Ming. They had all chosen the path they had come from without prior consultation, because if they fled in this direction, they would most likely encounter reinforcements. Ling Han sighed inwardly. Wanting to compete with a shattering void tier elite in speed was a pipe dream. Perhaps he could only use the Black Tower to save those he cared about. At most, he would temporarily not let some people out. The gold-seeking rat was so scared that it pretended to be dead again, lying down with its tail straight up, but Hunyo grabbed it and said with a smile, "The big rat is dead, let's eat it, okay?" Once these words were spoken, the gold-seeking rat naturally became lively again, squeaking strangely, meaning why did this little girl always want to eat babies? The rabbit felt the same way, and said as it ran, "Now you know Uncle Rabbit's hardships, right? Less nonsense, run for your life." Ling Han said. What kind of buffoons were by his side? In such a situation, they still didn't behave properly. This was obviously because the rabbit and Hunyo's speed was too fast. Although they weren't faster than a shattering void tier, in this kind of fleeing situation, you only needed to run faster than others, and at least be guaranteed to survive to the end. He, what a mighty demonic lion. It's perfect for this queen to ride on. At that moment, a lovely laugh rang out. A woman wearing a purple dress suddenly appeared. No one knew how she had appeared, but it was as if she had been born here. He, what a mighty demonic lion. This woman was as beautiful as a peach, standing in the sky. The breeze blew her long dress, and her bare feet were like jade, adding a bit of elegance to her. Shockingly, there were divine rays dancing around her, as if a goddess had descended to the mortal world. Ong! That beast abruptly stopped, and stared at this woman full of vigilance, flames spewing from its nostrils as if it was filled with fear towards her. Being able to make a shattering void tier beast feel fear, needless to say, this woman was definitely also a shattering void tier existence. Yao Huiyu and Jia Ming were both proud disciples of the 5 great sects, and usually saw shattering void tier elites of their own sects, as well as other sects, but none of them matched the woman in front of them. Truly strange, this was a shattering void tier elite, and definitely couldn't appear out of thin air. Ling Han, however, breathed a sigh of relief. This woman was the Lunar King. Little kitty, be obedient and be this king's mount. The Lunar King attacking the beast lion. Their great battle shook everyone to the point of hurriedly fleeing. If they were directly hit by the aftermath of each attack, it would be enough to kill them 100 times. In the distance, there was a team of 100 people quickly approaching, like an army. The formation was so neat that it made one speechless, with 10 people in a row, forming a neat square formation. Everyone's expression was solemn, and they held a long spear in their hands, emitting an iron-blooded aura. Everyone's cultivation was in the deity transformation tier, which was very shocking. Deity transformation tier warriors could be called elites no matter where they were, but this team of 100 people seemed to be someone's personal army. In the front row, there was even someone carrying a battle flag, which depicted a slender white hand holding up a crescent moon. They stopped in front of the battle, far closer than Ling Han and the others to the battle range of the Lunar King and the Beast Lion. When the battle waves swept over, they all struck with their spears, and the power of 100 people actually miraculously fused together, possessing the battle prowess of the Heaven tier, completely dispelling the aftermath. Everyone was dumbfounded. 100 deity transformation tier warriors could compare to Heaven tier warriors. This was like a dream. Ling Han, however, understood in his heart that this should be the Lunar King's personal army. Only the Purple Moon Empire, a powerful force buried who knew how many years ago, could master this kind of miraculous formation, gathering the power of many people as one. The Lunar King was really too powerful. Her slender white hands were comparable to divine materials, and with a slap, the demonic lion was continuously flipped over. And no matter how terrifying the demonic lion's attacks were, she very casually received them, appearing relaxed and happy. On her body, Ling Han sensed an aura similar to that of the Sword King and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Absolutely powerful, a king among kings. In less than the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the Beast Lion was captured by the Lunar King. It lay on the ground with its tongue hanging out, struggling with all its might to get up, but was completely helpless. The Lunar King half reclined and half sat on the Beast Lion's back in a graceful yet sexy posture, waved at Ling Han, and said, "Little handsome boy, come and massage this king's legs." She stretched out a perfectly straight long leg, and under her long skirt was actually a snow-white smooth thigh, stirring one's soul. Chapter 709. Many people were envious, even driven mad. This beauty was not only an exceptional beauty, but also possessed the strength of the peak of humanity, subduing even that Beast Lion. If one could have such a beauty, what else could one ask for in life? Little brother, bravely charge forward. Conquer our king. Men also have backbone. Even if the others were envious and jealous, they didn't dare to say it out loud, and didn't even breathe too loudly. That was an ultimate elite of the Shattering Void tier, and only she could tease others, but the solemn soldiers in the square formation made everyone's jaws drop. They actually whistled one after another, cheering for Ling Han. Now, how were these still soldiers with strict military discipline? They were simply a bunch of ruffians. Ling Han couldn't help but be speechless. What kind of people were these? The Lunar King pretended to be displeased, and said, "You little brats, are you trying to rebel? We wouldn't dare. But our king isn't young anymore, it's time to find a man to marry. We aren't good enough for our king, so we can only let outsiders benefit. Hee hee, this little brother of mine is not bad, with delicate features and shocking talent. Most importantly, he could make our king tease him, too rare." The old soldiers all called out glibly, all of them very excited. "You're not allowed to snatch Nyo's Ling Han." Hu Nyo immediately defended her food and stood in front of Ling Han. She glared at the 100 old soldiers angrily, her expression extremely ferocious, just like a little tiger cub. The old soldiers all laughed loudly. They were all battle-hardened, and really weren't afraid of Hu Nyo's fierce look. "Io, our king has met her match. A love triangle, so complicated." They jeered again. The Lunar King also laughed loudly. She rode on the Beast Lion, and said, "Little ones, follow me. This place is too important, and can't fall into the hands of others." "Yes, our king." The 100 old soldiers instantly became solemn, standing at attention, and uttering a unified voice. They raised their spears high, exuding an endless aura of iron and blood. This square formation of 100 people was very terrifying. If they split up and attacked together, Ling Han was confident he could defeat them all, but if he went against their formation, he would only be defeated and killed. 100 people formed a formation, and their battle prowess was raised to the celestial realm, which was extremely terrifying. Everyone didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. They were intimidated by this army, and even their souls were trembling. It was as if the tip of the spear was stained with blood. It was unknown how many experts had been killed by this army. The great Yin King rode on the demonic lion and broke through the sky. He casually shot out a divine chain and brought the 100-man army along with him as they crossed the sea. Brother Ling, could it be that you know that expert? Wenren Qian asked, her beautiful face unable to conceal the shock. That was a shattering void tier elite. The corner of Ling Han's mouth twitched, and he said, sort of. How depressing, he was being teased by an old monster that had been buried underground for who knew how many years. Seeing that Ling Han didn't want to say anything more, Wenren Qian didn't ask any more. In this battle, 90% of the forces that had entered had died. It could be said that it was quite miserable. There were only about 100 people that had survived, but without exception, they were all geniuses and super geniuses. Otherwise, how could they have kept up with the troops? They would have been eaten by the demonic lions long ago. Ling Han. Jia Ming looked over, his eyes shooting out two crimson rays of light that were extremely bewitching. Yao Huiyu also came over, the expression on his face extremely excited. At this time, Zhu Xian had already recovered her original appearance that could topple cities, which naturally made him excited. This was his Xian. Oh, Ling Han. Another youngster walked over. He looked ordinary, but if one looked closely, one would discover that his eyes were extremely deep, like a boundless ocean. Ling Han shrugged, and mumbled, really, all sorts of monsters have come running out. Yao Huiyu was the first to run over, and came to Zhu Xian's side, looking at her infatuatedly. Zhu Xian's expression was indifferent, and she said, Brother Yao, please conduct yourself with dignity. Call Lady Zhu, or directly call by her name. Yao Huiyu suddenly turned around, walked towards Ling Han, and said, Ling Han, I want to duel with you. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, in any case, we've fought side by side, and fighting and killing isn't too good. How about this, I have a little companion here, and if you can win, we'll fight again. He threw out the rock spirit. The rock man landed on the ground, and without any care for the consequences, just crawled around Ling Han. That appearance was really no different from a puppy. Yao Huiyu's face was full of anger. Ling Han actually sent such a thing to fight with him, how disrespectful was this? He brandished his sword, pointed at Ling Han, and said, fight with me. Seeing this, the rock spirit was instantly enraged. I was acting cute so that master would think of me from time to time, and give me good rocks to eat. You actually dare to point your sword at my master, what's the meaning of this? It crawled up, opened its mouth wide, and roared at Yao Huiyu. Hong! The sound wave was visible to the naked eye, surging towards Yao Huiyu, shockingly terrifying. Now, the rock spirit advanced into the high-level spiritual infant tier, and added with its identity as a creature of 5 elements, it was a king among kings, its strength terrifyingly powerful. Yao Huiyu's hair was blown loose, dancing in the hurricane. He stared at the rock spirit, not daring to have the slightest bit of carelessness anymore. He took a deep breath, his expression solemn, he knew that this would be a formidable opponent. Fight in the sky, Ling Han dismissed. The rock spirit immediately soared into the sky. Anyway, it hadn't reached the deity transformation tier, and couldn't draw power of the earth to strengthen itself, so fighting in the sky or on the ground was completely no difference. Yao Huiyu also rose into the sky, and started a fierce battle with the rock spirit. Ling Han didn't bother Jia Ming, but looked at the unknown youngster, and said, how should I address you, sir? Su Xiu ran, the youngster said indifferently, and even gave Ling Han a smile, revealing 2 rows of shockingly white teeth. So he was Su Xiu ran. He looked really ordinary. One small saber king appeared, his entire body was twined with saber chi, and this person was rumored to have formed saber heart, or at least half of it, yet he was ordinary, the gap was really big. However, alarm bells rang loudly in Ling Han's heart. Was this the other party returning to his natural state? He felt proud in his heart, and said, "You come with him." He pointed at Jia Ming. Humph. Jia Ming directly turned around and left, and said, "Su Xiu Ran, I'll leave this brat to you. I sensed that there's a chance for me in the sea, and I don't have time to waste with such a small character." He paused, turned around to look at Zhu Xian'er and Wenren Qian, and revealed a beast-like grin. "You're all my people." Xiu, he shot up, and leapt towards the sea. When his figure landed, he stepped on the water's surface, and borrowed the force to rise. He actually leapt completely with brute force, but his speed was astonishingly fast. Su Xiu Ran stood with his hands behind his back, and said, "Ling Han, you killed my Absolute Saber Sect's disciple, and as the next sect master of Absolute Saber Sect, I have to seek justice." Chapter 710. Bullshit. Ling Han shouted coldly. "Since ancient times, how many people has the Absolute Saber Sect killed? Why don't they pay justice to those who were killed? This is a world where the strong prey on the weak, so less bullshit, speak with strength." Su Xiu Ran wasn't annoyed, and merely smiled slightly, and said, "What right do you have to talk about strength in front of me? And who are you?" Ling Han retorted. Su Xiu Ran flicked his finger, and Wang, a saber ray immediately swept towards Ling Han. The saber ray moved like a bolt of lightning, so piercing that it hurt people's eyes. Ling Han, on the other hand, formed a fist to meet the attack, and struck the saber ray with incredible accuracy. Gee! The saber ray was like solid, actually pushing Ling Han to slide backwards, blasting him back a good 30 meters. Zhu Xian'er and the others were all shocked. Su Xiu Ran was too strong, ridiculously strong. Su Xiu Ran grinned, and said, "I've always been cultivating saber heart, so the improvement of my tier was very slow. After finally cultivating saber heart a few months ago, I concentrated on improving my tier, leaping from the spiritual infant tier to the deity transformation tier." Fuck, could cultivation tier be improved just by concentrating? This was a fuck you freak, cultivating saber heart at only 21 or 22 years old, and even advanced into the deity transformation tier, so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. Ling Han retracted his fist. Duh. Blood dripped from his fist, landing on the grass, yet giving off a thunderous sound. This was because his tier was too high, and added with physical cultivation, each drop of blood was as heavy as a mountain. He cultivated diamond body, and his physique was comparable to deity transformation tier rare metal, yet he was actually wounded by a flick of saber ray. It could be seen how shocking his battle prowess was. A higher tier, plus the addition of saber heart, caused Su Xiu Ran's saber ray to truly reach an invincible level. This was still a flick of a finger. What if he used a 10th tier spirit tool? Ling Han thought for a moment, then cracked a smile, and said, "I'm not yet 20 years old, and I'm confident I can advance into the deity transformation tier at 20. It's not like sword heart can't be comprehended. Comparing talent with me, aren't you looking for embarrassment?" Hearing this, everyone in the vicinity was moved. Yes, they had only realized the might of Su Xiu Ran's finger flick, but had forgotten Ling Han's age and strength. This was a monster who would not lose. Su Xiu Ran smiled, and said, "How could the heart of martial art be so easy to comprehend? I started learning the saber when I was 5, and even when I slept, I held the saber, accompanied by the saber, and became one with the saber. It still took me 16 years to grasp the heart of the saber." "That's because you're too stupid. For a genius like me, 5 or 6 years is enough," Ling Han said confidently. In his previous life, he had only managed to cultivate a few flashes of sword chi, which were extremely shabby. Naturally, they would not be of much help to his swordsmanship in this life. Therefore, his confidence was not blind. It was because he was truly awesome. In his previous life, his achievements in alchemy were world-shaking, and that was because he had spent all his energy on alchemy. In this life, if he put all his efforts into martial art and the way of the sword, he would similarly explode with dazzling brilliance. Su Xiaoran was surprised. Listing his own achievements was actually not enough to crush Ling Han's confidence. It should be known that whether it was reaching the deity transformation tier at the age of 21, or cultivating the heart of the sword, they were both astonishing achievements that made history. But Ling Han was actually still so full of confidence. Was this guy an idiot? But no matter what, he could forget about crushing Ling Han's confidence with words. He casually waved his hand, and Xiao, a blade of grass on the ground, was grasped in his hand. He said, "Then I will use this blade of grass as a saber and behead you, so that your blood will splatter over this wilderness for 5 steps. How arrogant, using grass as a saber to behead a prodigy, how confident." Yet Ling Han did not dare to be careless. At their level, even a blade of grass or a leaf could exert great power. He also plucked up a blade of grass, and said, "Then let me experience it." The stronger the opponent, the greater the pressure on him, and the more likely it was to comprehend the heart of the sword. The heart of the sword, the third tier of the way of the sword, was also the highest tier, but different from sword ray. It did not need to be built on the foundation of comprehending sword chi and sword ray. It was said to be the third tier because after cultivating sword chi and sword ray, it was easier to comprehend the heart of the sword. But this was not absolute. Ling Han had already cultivated sword ray, so the higher his cultivation, the stronger the power of sword ray, and no matter how strong sword ray was, it was impossible to comprehend the heart of the sword because of this. The heart of the sword was a brand new understanding. Ling Han was full of confidence. He had once obtained Feng Peyun's sword intent, and had a trace of this great expert of the way of the sword's heart, which gave him a clear direction. He was not copying Feng Peyun's heart of the sword, but simply letting him know what the heart of the sword was, and how he should walk this path. "Come on, give me pressure." Ling Han grinned, and took the initiative to attack, the grass in his hands stabbing out. Instantly, sword ray blazed, blinding everyone's eyes. Su Xiaoran naturally would not fear battle, and the blade in his hand slashed out, also unleashing a saber ray, slashing towards Ling Han. Ling Han leapt up, already rising into the air. "Come to the sky and fight to my heart's content." "Wrong, this has never been a duel, but rather I'll kill you." Su Xiaoran followed into the air, the grass in his hand waving continuously, and saber rays intertwined, dancing in the air, incredibly terrifying. Ling Han used the demon fairy step, and with the support of the thunderclap ninth heaven, his speed was as fast as a ghost, incredibly strange. But what was shocking was that Su Xiaoran's speed was not the slightest bit inferior to his. Obviously, although he had not learned the thunderclap ninth heaven, he had also grasped an astonishing movement technique, allowing his speed to cross a tier, barely able to compare to a heaven tier elite. This made his speed not slower than Ling Han's. Both of them fought speed with speed, moving at a speed comparable to a heaven tier elite, so fast that the people below couldn't catch them with the naked eye, and those with lower strength simply vomited. Ling Han was under immense pressure, in a dangerous situation, with killing intent at every step. What was saber heart? The heart of martial art was all the same, allowing a martial artist's senses to increase to a terrifying degree. No matter where the attack came from, it could be grasped immediately, and could also instantly capture the opponent's flaw, launching the fiercest attack. In other words, no matter how Ling Han attacked, Su Xiaoran could react immediately, and his attack was like an antelope hanging its horn, completely untraceable. Added with the fact that the opponent was a tier higher, he obviously had the advantage in terms of power, so every strike was naturally fatal and extremely terrifying. And to Ling Han's advantage, his physique was too tough. Even if he was occasionally slashed, the saber ray would only break the skin, unable to injure his meridians. With the circulation of the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, the injury would immediately heal. For the first time, Hunyo didn't laugh and laugh, her small face tensed up. Ling Han was definitely not inferior to Su Xiu Ran, but there was, after all, a tier difference. Ling Han, come on, come on. Beat this guy. Hunyo suddenly raised her small fists and cheered for Ling Han. Chapter 711. Silver-horned wild rhino, Shui Yenyu exclaimed softly. Is it very strong? Ling Han asked. His knowledge of immortal-level demonic beasts was naturally close to zero, and this should be the first immortal-level demonic beast he had seen. This demonic beast is comparable to a 2-star genius of the same level. It is mainly reflected in its silver horn, which is incredibly sharp. Moreover, it itself is also extraordinarily strong, and its defensive ability is considerably shocking. Its only shortcoming is that its speed is slightly slow. As they spoke, this silver-horned wild rhino was also digging its hooves, and the image of a large mountain appeared behind it, but there was no river. This meant that its cultivation level had not reached the late stage of the low extreme. Otherwise, the image of a river would have appeared. And judging from the size and materiality of this mountain, it should have reached the middle stage of the low extreme. Its true battle prowess is comparable to the peak stage of the low extreme. Shui Yenyu compared the battle prowess between the two of them. We only have a 20% chance of victory. Hey, did you not take my battle prowess into account? Ling Han called out. It is precisely because of your presence that we only have a 20% chance of victory. Otherwise, we could have a 30% chance of victory, Shui Yenyu said casually. Ha, are you thinking that I am a hindrance? How laughable. Shui Yenyu shook her head, and said, the chance of victory is too small. It is better not to fight. Ling Han also shook his head, and said, it is too late. This raging bull does not seem to have any plans to let us go. Long, that silver-horned wild rhino charged towards them. Its speed was indeed not too fast, but its weight was too frightening. Thus, after it charged, its destructive power was incredibly shocking. The ground behind it collapsed. This was also because the regulations of heaven and earth in this place were not stable enough. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the low extreme of the mountain river tier to have such destructive power. This guy's true size should be even larger than a mountain. Shrinking to this size, the impact would be incredibly frightening, Shui Yenyu said solemnly. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, I will create an opportunity, and you will kill it with a single strike. You are crazy, you are only in the shattering void tier. Shui Yenyu exclaimed in shock. Don't forget, my defense is something that even you are helpless against, Ling Han said. Thinking of the first battle between the two of them, Shui Yenyu's face flushed red, and she could not help but call him a pervert in her mind. A strange emotion rose up all over her, and actually gave her a lingering aftertaste. She was so frightened that she hurriedly shook her head, not daring to continue thinking about it. Peng. The silver-horned wild rhino had already charged over, and it was as if a mountain was crashing over. Ling Han stepped out bravely, and activated the Eye of Truth. He raised his right palm, and channeled the earth-overturning seal and the thunderclap ninth heaven mystical powers. Suddenly, he struck out with a palm strike, aiming for the eyes of the silver-horned wild rhino. This large rhino did not even have the intention to dodge. It lowered its head slightly, and then raised its head. Peng! Its silver horn collided with Ling Han's chest, and instantly lifted him up. Then, it ruthlessly sent him flying. Ling Han was like a cannonball, flying straight out. His full-powered strike did not even manage to wound a single hair of the large rhino. Demonic beasts were born with thick skin and flesh. At least, the physique of the mountain river tier was definitely not something that a shattering void tier cultivator could penetrate. This was completely different from a cultivator. Shui Yanyu, however, took the opportunity to strike. With a horizontal slash, her sword sliced towards the neck of the silver-horned wild rhino. However, this large guy suddenly turned around, and with its back facing Shui Yanyu, its legs suddenly sprang up, and kicked at her. Peng Shui Yanyu was also sent flying. However, she was also in the low extreme of the mountain river tier, after all. In terms of power, she might be slightly inferior, but not by too much. After somersaulting over a dozen times in the air, her momentum finally dissipated. It was only a single strike, and this large rhino had fully displayed its might, gaining the upper hand. Ling Han crawled up, and touched his chest. His clothes had naturally been torn, and there was actually a bloody mark on his chest. The skin had been cut a little, and a bloody mark had appeared. As expected of the silver horn, its destructive power is indeed astonishing. Even my physique could not completely defend against it, Ling Han murmured to himself. But if this scene was seen by others, they would definitely be shocked to the point of not daring to believe it. A mere shattering void tier cultivator could actually take a blow from a mountain river tier cultivator head-on, and it was only an additional bloody mark. One had to know that the silver-horned wild rhino was most famous for its single horn. Its destructive power was astonishing, and even lions and tiger-type demonic beasts of the same level would not dare to take a blow from its horn head-on. It would definitely be severely wounded, or even fatal. When Shui Yanyu saw this, she also breathed a sigh of relief. Though she was already mentally prepared, her small mouth still gaped into a circle. It was likely that she would not be able to get used to it for the rest of her life. Ling Han laughed loudly, and rolled back, charging towards the silver-horned wild rhino once again. "Senior sister, let's cooperate," he said. "Listen to my command and attack." Shui Yanyu immediately wanted to object. "I'm obviously stronger than you, and who knows how many hundreds of times stronger, so why is it that I'm the one listening to your orders?" But in this situation, there was no time for her to throw a tantrum. She could only suppress this kind of dissatisfaction in her heart and deal with Ling Han later. She also charged towards the silver-horned wild rhino with her sword, but she was not in a hurry to brandish her sword. Instead, she waited for Ling Han's command. "Attack!" Ling Han shouted. Wang, he, too, activated the 7-kill subduing soul technique, and charged towards the silver-horned wild rhino. This demonic beast was currently charging towards Ling Han, and its silver horn was about to reach Ling Han's chest. This spiritual attack naturally could not be avoided, and he was instantly blasted head-on. Its legs gave way, and its head tilted to the side. Its silver horn missed Ling Han, and crashed diagonally towards the side. Shui Yanyu took the opportunity to charge over with her sword, and slashed at the silver-horned wild rhino's neck. Ding! A spark flashed. Though the sword had slashed into the rhino's neck, it did not penetrate deep into the flesh. And under the pain, the silver-horned wild rhino immediately recovered its senses, and released a furious roar. It suddenly shook its head, and once again sent Ling Han flying. Then, it increased its speed and charged, causing the sword to leave its body. Fresh blood continuously dripped from its neck. This demonic beast had been enraged, and its body suddenly expanded to 10 times its original size. Its pitch-black body exuded a feeling of endless power. Peng, 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 the ground around it actually sank, as if it had been crushed by a mountain range. This demonic beast's mountain river has a special attribute, Ling Han said in surprise. The left minister had once mentioned that there were some mountain river stones here that had special attributes, such as producing a frightening gravity. And now, what this demonic beast was displaying was precisely supergravity. I think, it's not that the demonic beasts here cannot refine mountain river stones, but rather that they are born with a special ability in this area. Ling Han suddenly thought of a possibility. Regardless of whether that's the case or not, how should we resolve this situation now? Shui Yanyu leapt over, holding a sword in her hand, appearing very heroic. However, she was also the type that was as charming as water, and the combination of these two styles was like a fatal poison. Ling Han glanced at her again, and then said, "Just like before, I'll numb it, and you can take the opportunity to attack." Its physique is not so strong that it cannot be dealt with. Shui Yanyu turned around, and asked, "Can you hold on? Are you worried about me?" Ling Han countered with a smile. "Who cares if you die?" Chapter 712. However, at this point, the one truly leading the battle was neither Ling Han nor Su Xiu-ran, but the demon birth sword and the absolute saber. The martial art intent in the demon birth sword had already awakened on its own to resist the terrifying saber intent in the absolute saber, or else even the demon birth sword might be cut in half. Both were at the level of the shattering void tier, and with such a comparison, no matter how freakish Ling Han and Su Xiu-ran were, they were no longer the protagonists. However, their role couldn't be ignored. No matter which one of them died in battle, then the demon birth sword and the absolute saber would definitely lose their brilliance, and this battle would naturally end. Ding, 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 ding. In the fierce clash, countless rice-sized nicks appeared on the demon birth sword, and although the absolute saber was tattered, it wasn't further damaged, obviously superior. Such damage wasn't a big deal. As long as it was nurtured well, a 10th tier spirit tool could completely recover on its own, just like a martial artist. It had a considerable healing ability, provided that the vein-like patterns on it weren't damaged. This was the key to why a spirit tool was a spirit tool. Obviously, in the competition of spirit tools, the absolute saber suppressed the demon birth sword, but now Ling Han's strength suppressed Su Xiu-ren instead, giving him enough pressure that he couldn't fully activate the saber intent in the absolute saber, causing the battle prowess of both sides to be pulled to the same level again. This was obviously definitely disadvantageous for Ling Han. He relied on Black Tower's power boost and poison to have his current battle prowess. Once his tier dropped, he and the demon birth sword would obviously be completely restrained, and that wasn't good news. Ling Han simply didn't control the demon birth sword. This spirit tool had already awakened on its own, and could completely fight alone. He took out the sunset bow. Under the premise that he couldn't use the 3 styles of black origin, archery was obviously his strongest killing move. 3 mystical powers condensed together, and Ling Han shot an arrow. Xiu, the sharp arrow turned into a stream of light, shooting towards Su Xiu-ran. Su Xiu-ran brandished his saber. Ding, the absolute saber actually slashed on the arrow, and saber intent burst forth, easily cutting this treasured arrow forged from 8th tier rare metal into 2. After this arrow, both of them were shocked. Ling Han was naturally shocked by Su Xiu-ran's reaction. It should be known that his current battle prowess had already reached the limits of the heaven tier, but his annihilating dragon star arrow was still blocked. Meanwhile, Su Xiu-ran was even more shocked, because that saber strike was not unleashed by him, but the saber intent within it had guided the invincible saber to block it. If it were him, he would have been hit by the arrow. Scary, both of them had labeled each other. This was an opponent that neither of them could afford to underestimate. After this exchange, neither of them made another move. I have to correct myself. You are indeed a rare opponent. Su Xiu-ran laughed. In the current situation, I can't kill you. He was quite honest. Ling Han revealed a smile and said, I can't kill you either. Then let's stop for now. Su Xiu-ran put away the invincible blade. The next time we meet, if your strength doesn't improve quickly, then you can only be killed by me. Same to you, Ling Han said. Su Xiu-ran didn't bother with the others, and directly stepped into the air and left. Ling Han watched his back, and only landed after a long while. His battle prowess was boosted by Black Tower's power installation and medicinal pills, but was Su Xiu-ran his true battle prowess? Obviously not. He definitely couldn't use the invincible blade for too long, which was why he retreated bravely. If the two continued to fight, it would be to see whose trump card could last longer. Life and death would be decided in an instant, and this was something neither of them wanted to happen. So, Su Xiu-ran took the initiative to stop, and Ling Han wasn't aggressive. Brother-in-law is a freak, Li Fengyu murmured. The battle just now almost drove him crazy. One was in the spiritual infant tier, and the other was in the deity transformation tier, but they both displayed shattering void tier battle prowess. Ling Han put away the demon birth sword. This spirit tool had many nicks, and needed to be nurtured for a period of time. He obviously couldn't do it with only spiritual infant tier cultivation, but the Black Tower could. Congratulations, Brother Ling, for climbing to new heights again. Wenren Qian said sincerely. If Ling Han winning against Small Saber King made people feel that he was hard to surpass, then the battle just now was enough to make all geniuses despair. Ling Han, Su Xiu-ran, and the likes had already left the so-called geniuses far behind, reaching a height that they could only look up to. In the sky, the battle between the rock spirit and Yao Huiyu also ended, with no clear victor. Such a result made Yao Huiyu's expression ashen, and he immediately turned to leave, too ashamed to speak to Zhu Xian'er. He couldn't even beat Ling Han's puppet, and still had the face to challenge Ling Han. Let's go. Ling Han also led everyone on their way, but didn't meet up with Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing, and only brought Yuan Chenghe. Everyone treaded on the surface of the sea. With their strength, they only needed to borrow a bit of power to walk on the water's surface as if flying. Although the battle had already passed for a long time, everyone still kept the battle between Ling Han and Su Xiu-ran on the tip of their tongues. That was really too breathtaking, making them relish in talking about it, and they couldn't stop no matter what. This sea region was also ridiculously large, and there definitely wasn't a single island, so they could only hurry on, and didn't even have the chance to stop for a meal. Fortunately, after advancing into the flower blossom tier, food and drink were no longer necessary. There was some effect, but not much. Because they kept on hurrying on, the surrounding scenery didn't change, and everyone became more and more bored. They all stopped talking, and only wanted to fly away from this sea region as soon as possible. Peng! Suddenly, the waves split open, and an incredibly thick and long tentacle lashed out, whipping towards Ling Han and the others. Ling Han swung his fist to meet it, his slender figure practically disproportionately small in front of this massive tentacle. Peng! He was immediately sent flying, but the tentacle also paused slightly, giving the others time to disperse. This wasn't the first time they encountered an attack after coming to the sea, but the attack this time was the most powerful. Deity Transformation Tier Beast. Ling Han flew back. His power wasn't a match, but his physique was too strong, so he wasn't afraid of a head-on clash. This beast's true form didn't appear, and only waved out a tentacle. It seems to be an octopus. Everyone guessed. Everyone basically lived on land and rarely came into contact with the sea region, which was the domain of the sea race. Xiu, that tentacle lashed out again, and the sea rippled as another tentacle lashed out. The power of the deity transformation tier added with that amount, this attack definitely reached the peak of the deity transformation tier. No one dared to take it head-on, and even the rock spirit didn't dare to take it head-on. Only a freak like Ling Han was qualified to take it head-on. Grilled octopus, grilled octopus. Hunyo cheered, and shot towards a large tentacle. Her stance was to forcibly chop one off. Bring one for Uncle Rabbit. Rabbit waved its hand. Ling Han laughed loudly, drew out the demon birth sword, and charged over. A deity transformation tier beast was obviously a great tonic, so how could he miss it when he saw it? Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 713. Everyone fought the tentacle monster together. Ling Han was obviously the main force. Apart from him, no one could resist this beast's whip. After he blocked the tentacle monster's attack, Hunyo and the others took the opportunity to show their might, slashing at this beast to collect its flesh. However, this monster's defense was shocking, and sabers and swords were completely useless against it. It was extremely slippery, as if it was covered in a layer of oil. Moreover, its elasticity was extremely good, and it could also dissolve power. There were only two people that could threaten it, Ling Han and Hunyo. Ling Han had the demon birth sword, which was extremely sharp, while Hunyo's claws were sharp and could tear apart the tentacle monster's skin, tearing off a large chunk of flesh with one move. Her violence was terrifying. The gold-seeking rat shrank in Zhu Xian'er's embrace and covered its eyes with its two little claws, no longer daring. This little girl was too savage, and she kept thinking about its flesh, scaring it to death just thinking about it. The tentacle monster was enraged, and waved more tentacles, launching a barrage of attacks at Ling Han and Luo Han. However, there were only a total of 8 tentacles, and as they waved about, they stirred up the sea and swept up a tsunami that was several hundred meters tall. This beast was truly massive. Just the tentacles that were exposed above the sea were over 300 meters long, and the parts in the water were definitely even larger, easily stirring up a raging tide. Ling Han wanted to charge into the sea and cut down this tentacle monster's main body, but once he entered the sea, he discovered something was off. The water pressure was shockingly great, squeezing his bones to the point that chong chong sounded. If he went deep into the sea, his entire body would be squeezed to pieces. After fighting for half a day, the tentacle monster still retreated in defeat, leaving behind a long tentacle. This was severed by Ling Han and Hunyo's combined attack. One slashed with a sword, and the other tore with a claw, forcibly leaving behind the opponent's massive tentacle. If that wasn't the case, the monster might not have retreated. Ling Han stored the tentacle into the Black Tower, causing Wenren Qian, Li Fengyu, and Yuan Qinghe to be speechless. How big was this guy's spatial spirit tool, to be able to store such a large tentacle inside? There's grilled fish to eat. Hunyo smiled happily. They moved forward. This place was obviously not suitable for grilling fish, so they would have to wait until they reached land. But the next day, they were immediately attacked by the tentacle monster, and it actually grew back the tentacle that was cut off the day before. It was obvious that the tentacle was shorter, and the color was more fresh. Otherwise, Ling Han and the others would have thought that it was another tentacle monster. The result of the battle was that the tentacle monster once again contributed a tentacle, which was taken by Ling Han. But on the third day, it came again and left another tentacle. Everyone was speechless. Are you here to hunt or to give gifts? On the fourth day, the tentacle monster arrived as promised. This time, Ling Han and the others had already come up with a battle strategy. After Ling Han heavily wounded the tentacle monster with annihilating dragon star arrow, the rock spirit and Hunyo would work together to grab a tentacle and forcibly pull it up from the bottom of the sea. It was definitely a colossus. The tentacle was over 5,000 meters long, and then its body. Out of everyone's expectations, they thought it was a colossal octopus, but who would have thought that this big guy's body actually shrunk into a clamshell? This clamshell was obviously also astonishingly large. Its 300-meter-long body was like a palace at the bottom of the sea. The battlefield moved into the air, and this tentacle monster's battle prowess decreased greatly. It was ganged up on by everyone, and in the end, all 8 tentacles were cut off, not having time to grow back. Then, the clamshell was also broken, and it was blasted into pieces. Everyone cried out in surprise. They saw that there was actually a huge pearl inside the clamshell. Even though they were very far away, they could still feel the spiritual qi emitting from the pearl. It made them feel relaxed, as if they could comprehend the truth of martial arts. Such a large pearl, it would take at least 1,000 years to nurture, Li Fengyu guessed. Wenren Qian shook her head, and said, definitely more than that. I've seen 1,000-year-old pearls, and they were only fist-sized. This one is about the size of a millstone. Ling Han also nodded. In his previous life, he'd also obtained a few thousand-year-old pearls. Grinding them into powder and adding them into ingredients could greatly increase the effects of a pill. They were about the size of a fist, far from this one. The longer a creature lives, the rarer it is. This giant clam has lived for who knows how many years, possibly thousands or tens of thousands of years, he said. According to my conjecture, this giant clam was captured by this tentacle monster, and even its shell was occupied by it, slowly digesting the pearl's power. The reason why it could grow new limbs so quickly is firstly because of its own characteristics, and secondly because of the benefits provided by this pearl. Zhu Xian'er was astonished, and said, in other words, this pearl is originally even larger. It should be so. Ling Han nodded. Rich, such a large pearl, how many origin crystals can it sell for? Li Fengyu's eyes were full of stars. Such a treasure, you actually want to exchange it for origin crystals? Yuan Cheng he scoffed. Short-sighted. The gold-seeking rat was instantly displeased. How did Bao Bao offend you? It stared at Yuan Cheng he and ground its teeth, really wanting to bite someone. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, we should still thank this beast. Not only did it give us a large amount of beast meat, there's also a 10,000-year-old treasured pearl. I think, in the entire vast lands, this is unique. Clams that could live for 10,000 years were few in the first place, and normally only had a lifespan of a few hundred years. To raise a 10,000-year-old treasured pearl, not only did it have to live long, it also had to have good luck and not be injured by any creature in between. In the end, this old clam also didn't escape its fate of being eaten. The tentacle monster's tentacles were all-pervasive and could drill into the old clam's closed shell, sucking the old clam's flesh and blood clean. It definitely met its nemesis. Ling Han put away the pearl. This pearl was too precious, and if it was broken and divided, then at least half of its essence would be lost. That was something only an idiot would do. He put away the pearl, and gave Li Fengyu, his sister, and Wenren Qian some spiritual liquid as compensation. Everyone was happy. After all, killing the tentacle monster was mainly due to Ling Han and Hunyou's efforts. Yuan Cheng he didn't get anything, but he wasn't dissatisfied. This was because Ling Han treated him as one of his own, and giving him something would be treating him like an outsider. His mentality also changed, going from being unconvinced and resisting at the beginning to being sincerely convinced now, mainly because he realized the gap between him and Ling Han. However, at this moment, 3 people directly flew over from afar, their target clear. 2 old and 1 young. The 2 old men were both in the deity transformation tier, while the young man was in the flower blossom tier, impressively walking in front, appearing somewhat unusual. Martial art was the place that paid the most attention to seniority. Hand over that treasured pearl, and you guys can scram, the young man ordered. When his gaze swept over Zhu Xian'er, his eyes involuntarily shone, and he pointed over, saying, she stays. All right, I'll sell it to you. Hunyou immediately clapped her hands in agreement. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 714. Hunyou always saw Zhu Xian'er as a competitor, constantly thinking of packing her up and sending her away. Thus, if someone wanted Zhu Xian'er, she obviously raised both hands and feet in approval. The young man's face was full of pride, taking it as a matter of course. What kind of status did he have? Could it be that he couldn't get a woman even if he wanted one? This woman was really beautiful, gorgeous and unparalleled in the world. Otherwise, just the 2 beauties by her side should be enough to make him want to make a move. But now, his eyes could only accommodate 1 person. Too beautiful, how could there be such a beauty? She practically shouldn't exist on earth, but a goddess of the 9th heaven. He frowned, and said, what are you guys still standing there for? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh, and said, "Needless to say, you must be a spoiled brat of some force, taking it as your duty to bring disaster to your family, diligently striding towards this goal, a typical person who seeks death." The young man snorted, and said, "I'm Yu Xianming, my family's ancestor is a heaven-tier elite, and so is the third ancestor, and so is the seventh ancestor." 3 heaven-tier elites in one sect, this was indeed awesome. In Ling Han's previous life, this was unimaginable, but now that martial art was flourishing, and the number of shattering void-tier elites was in the hundreds, what were 3 heaven-tier elites in one sect? Ling Han gave an "oh," and said, "Heaven-tier forces, I really can't beat them for now." This was the truth. If he wanted to fight heaven-tier elites, he'd have to reach the deity transformation tier. At that time, with his freakish talent, he'd naturally be able to match heaven-tier elites, completely surpassing his peak battle prowess in his previous life. Thinking about it, this was like a dream he'd only cultivated for a few years in this life. "It's good that you know you're an ant, hand over the precious pearl." Yu Xianming shouted coldly. He was used to being complacent, and Ling Han's slight disobedience made him extremely displeased. His index finger twitched, having the urge to kill. Ling Han smiled, and said, "If I don't hand it over, you can hit me." Yu Xianying pointed his halberd, and said, "Not hit you, but smash you." "Elder Zhu, Elder Yang, take them all down," he said to the 2 elders. "Yes, young master." The 2 soul transformation elders respectfully replied at the same time. One of them was called Zhu Bai, and the other was called Yang Chong. Normally, they wouldn't listen to a youth. But who asked them to be the most talented of the 3 generations of the Yu family, so the 2 of them were assigned to be Yu Xianying's Dao protectors. Although they were called Dao protectors, they were actually bodyguards, thugs, and high-level servants. But who asked the Yu clan to be powerful and have 3 heaven-tier elites? "There are 3 types of people I hate the most." Yu Xianying pretended to be profound. "The first type is an arrogant idiot without any ability. The second type was people who didn't eat spicy food. The third type is those who disobey my orders. If these 3 types of people offend me, the result will be the same. Die." As they spoke, Zhu Bai and Yang Chong already charged towards Ling Han and the others. They raised their hands, and the will of martial art circulated. A large crimson tiger rushed out of one person's body, while the other struck out a white crane, formed from interweaving patterns. Just that terrifying aura could make low-tier martial artists unable to raise their heads. This was a mystery realm, and death couldn't be more normal. Thus, the 2 of them attacked without mercy. Unfortunately, Ling Han and the others were all kings of martial arts, so how could they be overwhelmed by their aura? At most, their faces would turn slightly pale because of that corporeal aura, but the effect on their battle prowess was extremely limited. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Chenghe, you deal with one." Yuan Chenghe was shocked. He was only in the spiritual infant tier, so how could he fight against a deity transformation tier elite? He was indeed a genius, and a very strong one at that, but he definitely couldn't cross a major tier to battle a deity transformation tier. But since Ling Han spoke, he could only brace himself and fight. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Small rock, you go help him." "Ong!" The rock spirit roared angrily. Peng, 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 it stomped heavily on the ground, fighting side by side with Yuan Chenghe. Yuan Chenghe was instantly reassured. He knew the rock spirit's strength. Although its power was in the spiritual infant tier, its resistance was definitely at the deity transformation tier level. With it as a meat shield, everything would be fine. Ling Han said again, "Hunyo, you take care of the other one." "Okay." Hunyo immediately jumped out. She was very unhappy that she didn't sell Zhu Xian, this bewitching girl. "Brother Ling, Qian also requests to fight," Wenren Qian said. "Okay." Ling Han nodded. Zhu Bai and Yang Chong were both furious. These juniors dared to treat them like nothing, and even discussed how to divide them up. They were absolutely audacious, and didn't know what to do. Hun Yo faced Yang Chong, while Yuan Chenghe and the other two fought Zhu Bai together. Peng, 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 the battle immediately began. With a fight, Zhu Bai and Yang Chong's expressions changed. Fuck, why were these juniors so strong? Zhu Bai was alright. Although Yuan Chenghe and the other two were outstanding, they didn't have deity transformation tier battle prowess after all. They completely relied on the rock spirit as a meat shield, taking on most of Zhu Bai's attacks. Meanwhile, Wenren Qian and Yuan Chenghe were actually fighting from place to place, and didn't dare to fight him head-on. This obviously gave him the complete initiative, and he still had the upper hand even when fighting 1 against 3, this was naturally to be expected. A deity transformation tier against a spiritual infant tier, it was easy for one person to fight 100, but 2 youngsters plus a puppet blocked him, which made him very shocked. If he was only shocked, then Yang Chong would be scared out of his wits. Hun Yo's speed was too fast. At first, he obviously saw Hun Yo as a joke. Who would attach importance to a 7 or 8-year-old little girl? But Hun Yo's attack made him know that he definitely made an error in judgment. Xiao, 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 Hun Yo turned into lightning and constantly flashed around him. Taking advantage of his unguarded moment, she swung her small fist and fiercely punched over. Even if he formed a shield with origin power to defend, he was still hit until he staggered. It couldn't be helped. He didn't know where Hun Yo's fist came from, and could only set up defenses all over his body. With his origin power scattered, how could he match Hun Yo's full-powered punch? He wanted to counterattack. After all, Hun Yo was only in the spiritual infant tier, and if he hit her once, she would definitely be finished. However, the problem was that he couldn't catch Hun Yo's shadow at all, and could only take a beating. Nyo's ultimate move, Invincible Twisting Fist. Super Groin Kicking Kick. Kick the chrysanthemum. Kick the balls again, and the eggs and chicken will fly. Hun Yo attacked without any scruples. Who could have too many demands on a little girl? Plus, her body was small, and she mainly attacked the bottom 3, making Yang Chong's face green. If he was hit once, he wouldn't be able to keep his integrity in his old age. Zhu Bai and Yang Chong's strength was incomparably different, but their situation was like 2 different worlds of ice and fire. Meanwhile, Ling Han walked towards Yu Xianing, and said with a smile, "I'm different from you. I only hate one kind of person, do you know who it is?" Chapter 715. Shui Yanyu did not dare to let down her guard in the slightest. An enemy that could teleport through space was too frightening. "Be careful," she warned Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but chuckle, and asked, "Be careful of what?" "That old man." Shui Yanyu was a little driven mad. "Did you not see a living person suddenly disappear?" "Oh, him." Ling Han scratched his head, then spread his hands, and said, "It should be impossible for him to appear again." You. Realization suddenly dawned on Shui Yanyu. "You drew him into your spatial god tool. You finally realized." Ling Han sighed. Shui Yanyu shook her head, and said, "No, that's not right. Spatial god tools only have the ability to contain others. If others are unwilling to enter, can you still force them? With that old man's strength, you definitely could not force him to enter. Moreover, so much time has passed, so he should have fought his way out by now. My spatial god tool is slightly different. Even if a great elite of the heavenly body tier enters, whether they stand or kneel depends on my mood," Ling Han said with a smile. Shui Yanyu stared at Ling Han in shock. This was too astonishing. In other words, even if Empress Wan Xing entered into that spatial god tool, her life and death would still be within Ling Han's control. Hiss, had this guy really come from a small world? What? Have you been stunned silly by my handsomeness? Ling Han asked with a smile. Shui Yenyu's beautiful eyes swiveled, and she suddenly said, then when we encountered so many demonic beasts previously, you could actually easily store them into your spatial god tool, right? This. Ling Han pondered. It wasn't a good thing for this woman to be too smart. Shui Yenyu was instantly annoyed. I was almost severely wounded a few times. You didn't believe me, so you didn't use your spatial god tool. Ling Han snickered, and said, well, I still believe you. Otherwise, I could very well watch you be killed by that old man, right? Sophistry. In any case, you just don't believe me. Shui Yenyu was still displeased. Ling Han shrugged, and said with a smile, senior sister, aren't you getting too into character? We were only pretending to be lovers. We didn't say anything about sharing our hearts. Shui Yenyu's pretty face paled. She bit down hard on her lip, and brandished her sword to slash at the vines in front of her. Did I say it too seriously? Ling Han thought. But he and this senior sister Shui were indeed only pretending to be lovers. Aside from that, they didn't have any deep friendship. How could he easily reveal such a huge secret like a spatial god tool? If it were a decisive and ruthless person like the Rain Emperor, he might even kill Shui Yenyu to keep the secret. He had already shown mercy by making a move to save her, so why did it seem like he was the one who had done something wrong now? He really couldn't understand women. Ling Han first dealt with the corpses of the two young men from the Lang clan, and then walked over to help Shui Yenyu slash at the vines. Stay away from me. Shui Yenyu said with a cold expression. This time, Ling Han didn't listen. Instead, he continued to slash at the vines without a word. How thick-skinned. Shui Yenyu spat, but her expression was slightly better. Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief. The sky was about to clear after the storm. After another while, more people came from behind, but this time, they were from the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and were acquainted with Shui Yenyu. Everyone moved together, and the speed at which they advanced instantly became much faster. More and more people came from behind, and with so many people, it was actually impossible for them to fight, because no one had absolute confidence that they could kill the other. If they rashly started a battle, it was possible that both sides would suffer great losses. Moreover, everyone had come here for the mountain river stones. If they wanted to fight, they could do so on the battlefield. The small-scale battles between the three great majestic empires had never stopped. When the number of people reached over 100, this was already an invincible force. They swept through everything in their way, and the demonic tree could only uproot itself and flee, not daring to fight at all. From this point of view, a brainless tree was actually smarter than a demonic beast, which made people click their tongues in amazement. After exiting the gorge, this alliance was immediately declared broken. Everyone used their movement techniques, and went their own ways. No one had developed any kind of battle camaraderie, so it was too dangerous to team up with people who were unrelated to them. To say nothing of passers-by, even a member of a clan might not be able to completely trust them with his back. Ling Han and Shui Yenyu were actually already different. They were obviously fake lovers, yet they had walked such a long path together, and had developed a kind of tacit understanding between them. Since he had already let Shui Yenyu know a little bit of the Black Tower's ability, Ling Han did not hold back anymore. When he encountered Mountain River tier demonic beasts, he directly attacked, first knocking them unconscious, and then drawing them into the Black Tower. It was a piece of cake. However, this was only limited to those in the low extreme. Once he encountered those in the medium extreme, even Ling Han would be helpless, and could only retreat in defeat. Even so, their harvest was still astonishing. In a short 2 days, they had killed over 100 demonic beasts, so much so that Shui Yenyu almost could not believe her own eyes. To say nothing of the mountain river stones, just the spiritual meat was already very valuable. Moreover, they finally obtained a mountain river stone. This was a stone that was completely dark green in color. It was slightly transparent, and there was a hint of coolness in his hand. Sure enough, it was different from the others, and could be distinguished with a single glance. Shui Yenyu tossed the mountain river stone to Ling Han, and said, "Hurry up and refine it. Once it condenses into a mountain river, you will truly possess the ability to travel through this place." Ling Han nodded. He did not need to advance too far in the mountain river tier. The most important thing now was to condense a mountain river, and become an immortal level elite. Unfortunately, this mountain river stone did not possess any special attributes. "Stop!" A shout traveled over from the front, and they saw two groups of people rushing over from the side. The group running in front was a group of 3, and behind them was a group of 7. It was obvious that one group was fleeing, and the other group was chasing. "Leave behind the mountain river stone, and we can spare your lives," the group of 7 called out. The 3 people in front turned a deaf ear to them. This was really a joke. They had come here for the mountain river stone, so they naturally would not easily compromise. They gritted their teeth, and each of them retrieved a pair of wings, which they pressed onto their backs. They actually unfurled a pair of giant wings that were as long as 9 meters. The other 2 grabbed onto this person's thighs, and as the giant wings unfurled, they instantly soared into the sky. Mountain river tier cultivators did not possess the ability to fly in the immortal realm either. Unless they belonged to an extremely special race that possessed wings, they could only rely on flight god tools. When the 7 people behind them saw this, they all stopped in their tracks in dejection. This was naturally beyond their control. In truth, the group of 3 in front had not planned to use this treasure in the first place. It was completely because they had arrived behind Ling Han and Shui Yenyu, and were afraid that they would be caught in a pincer attack. That was why they had reluctantly used this treasure. This was a treasure that could only be used once, and it was truly distressing. The eyes of the group of 7 swept over Ling Han and Shui Yenyu, and a cold smile appeared on their faces. "So the mountain river stone is in your hands. Hurry up and hand it over. We only managed to obtain this after much difficulty, and it was stolen by those 3 just now. The 2 of you had better hand it over. This is not something that belongs to you." The 7 people said one after another. Ling Han and Shui Yenyu exchanged a look, and felt that these 7 people were really shameless. Weren't they lying right in front of them? Chapter 716. Ran? Ling Han gazed, but Zhu Bai already ran out of sight. Even if he and Hunyo chased, it was basically impossible to catch up. Earlier, it was because Hunyo made a fuss that Zhu Bai seized the opportunity. Otherwise, with Ling Han and Hunyo watching, at least deity transformation tier elites couldn't possibly escape. Yu family is indeed a very strong heaven tier force, and under the 5 great sects, it can be ranked as a first-rate force, when Ren Qian said, her pretty face showing worry. One family with 3 heaven tier elites, who dared to take it lightly. Moreover, Yu family's 7th ancestor also entered the historical site. If Zhu Bai tells what happened here to Yu family's 7th ancestor, then we'll be in big trouble, she continued. Ling Han, on the other hand, was fearless. He had the Black Tower, and at worst, he'd temporarily avoid the brunt. With his advancement speed, he'd probably be able to cross into the deity transformation tier by the end of the year, and killing normal heaven tier elites wouldn't be a problem. With the Black Tower's power boost, he could even fight shattering void tier elites. His gaze swept over everyone, and he said, "Heaven tier elites came, and it's not that I can't contend, but this involves my trump card. I'm wondering if I can trust you guys." Being swept by him one by one, everyone's heart tightened. Ling Han's gaze was filled with deterrence, and his entire person emitted the presence of a king, making them feel uncontrollably dirty. Ling Han paused, and said, "I'll show you guys a treasure, but the premise is that you guys must be of one heart and one mind with me, and never betray me. So, those who want to continue stay, and the others leave." His words were obviously said to Li Fengyu and his sister, Wenren Qian, Yuan Chenghe, and the rabbit. Li Fengyu and his sister looked at each other, and were the first to declare their stance, saying, "We siblings are willing to advance and retreat with young Master Han, and hitch a ride on young Master Han's ship." They didn't have the slightest doubt in Ling Han's strength and potential. Yuan Chenghe also said, "I'm young Master Han's follower." The rabbit chewed a mouthful of spirit medicine and said, "You, brat, still owe Uncle Rabbit 2 dragon blood tyrant ginseng." Uncle Rabbit naturally won't leave. Only Wenren Qian was hesitant. She was also a prodigy of heaven, and she had her own pride. Even Jia Ming's adoration towards her was rejected by her without the slightest hesitation. Naturally, she wouldn't easily make a promise. Moreover, judging from Ling Han's attitude, it was clear that he wanted to recruit her as his subordinate. This was something that her pride would not allow. She considered for a long time before saying, "Brother Ling, I'll take my leave for now." Ling Han nodded with a smile and said, "We are friends. If you have any difficulties in the future, don't hesitate to tell me. I won't refuse if I can do it." Wenren Qian was naturally overjoyed, and she hurriedly said, "Then I'll thank Brother Ling first." She nodded towards everyone, then leaped up, and flew into the distance. Ling Han glanced at everyone and said, "I will bring everyone to a place. Don't resist my divine sense." Xiao, he brought everyone into the Black Tower. N. Yuan Chenghe and the others, as well as Rabbit, all cried out in surprise. What place was this? It definitely wasn't the mystery realm from before. Could it be that Ling Han could carry a small world with him? Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, "This is my spatial spirit tool, it can only accommodate living things." Yuan Chenghe and the others instantly revealed shocked expressions. A spatial spirit tool that could accommodate living things was unheard of. Rabbit drew in a cold breath, and said, "Brat, this isn't a spirit tool, but a divine tool." Divine tool. Even Zhu Xian cried out in surprise. That's right. Rabbit nodded. Although ancient ancestor ascended to the divine realm, a very, very long time ago, he could still communicate with the lower realm through some special means, so Uncle Rabbit also knows some things about the divine realm. A space that can accommodate living things, only a divine being has the great ability to extract it, and to make it into a portable mustard seed space. That's something only a mighty divine being can accomplish. You guys, the mystery realm we were in before was actually an independent space that could accommodate living things, but couldn't be carried around. Instead, it was fixed in a certain location and superimposed with a normal space. Wanting to compress a small world into a mustard seed is too difficult, and the larger the space, the harder it is to accomplish because a normal space will produce compression, and the larger it is, the easier it is to collapse. So, our spatial rings are all very small. Everyone nodded. Generally speaking, spatial rings were only the size of a box, and reaching the size of a house was extremely rare. Before, they only knew that the larger the space, the harder it was to make a spirit tool, but they didn't know where the difficulty lay. Now, they finally understood. So, mystery realms were all fixed places, unlike spatial rings that could be carried around. If they were fixed in a place, it was like building a house. One could lay a good foundation in advance and reinforce the walls, so it wouldn't easily collapse. Everyone gasped when they saw the terrifying space of the Black Tower. It could completely compare in size with a mystery realm. Only Ling Han knew that the space of the Black Tower was larger than all the mystery realms he'd seen, even larger than all of them combined. It's definitely the handiwork of a god. Everyone exclaimed. Ling Han smiled. They only knew that the Black Tower's space was large, but didn't know the Black Tower's special abilities, such as growing spirit herbs, producing the essence of earth and water, and even the Black Tower's might could destroy a realm. The Black Tower wasn't as simple as a spatial divine tool. On the contrary, this might only be its smallest function. If such a divine tool was placed in the divine realm, it's guaranteed that people would fight over it, what more when the space is so large, Rabbit concluded. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "You speak as if you've been to the divine realm." Rabbit humphed. He originally wanted to boast, but Hu Nyo's fierce gaze already swept over, and instantly stopped. Ling Han said, "So, even if a shattering void tear cultivator attacks, I have the ability to protect myself. And our aspiration is to split open the skies." Split open the skies. Yuan Cheng and the others were all shocked. What was splitting open the skies? Split open the skies, and bring the vast lands to ascend to the divine realm, Ling Han explained. What? Yuan Cheng and the others were so shocked that their scalps went numb. Did they hear wrong? This was too shocking, wasn't it? To bring all the creatures of a continent into the divine realm, could this be done? Splitting open the skies is obviously difficult, so it requires everyone's cooperation and effort, Ling Han said. He roughly explained the matter of establishing a nation and splitting open the skies, but didn't mention the 10,000-year conspiracy of the 5 great sections. Yuan Cheng and the others' blood boiled as they listened. They were youngsters, so of course they all had lofty aspirations, and what great cause in the world could compare to splitting open the skies? "Young Master Han, I'm willing to follow you," Yuan Cheng he said loudly. "He, brother-in-law, if you don't mind me being a hindrance, I'm also willing to offer my meager assistance," Li Fengyu said. "Good." Ling Han was very satisfied. Chapter 717. Everyone exited the Black Tower and continued forward. Another 2 days later, they finally walked out of the area of the sea, and ahead was another plain. Green grass, the occasional large tree, and sporadic mountain peaks seemed to have returned to before, with the scenery hardly changing. Could the sea be the center of this mystery realm? Could it be that we've circled back, the treasure is hidden in the sea? Everyone became suspicious. Xiao. At this moment, a black shadow streaked across the sky, and upon closer inspection, it was actually a pavilion. It wasn't sent flying. Instead, it grew a pair of legs and started running on the ground. In the blink of an eye, it had disappeared. Holy shit! Ling Han and the others looked at each other, speechless. What the hell, it became a spirit, a pavilion actually grew legs and ran on its own. Are my eyes blurred? Li Fengyu rubbed his eyes. It shouldn't be only your eyes blurred, Ling Han said. It was impossible for everyone's eyes to be blurred at the same time. Xiao. At this moment, a few more figures streaked across the sky, astonishingly fast. "Ha, Lunar King!" everyone exclaimed again. They recognized one of them, riding a terrifying beast lion. It couldn't be more obvious. To be able to stand side by side with Lunar King, these people should all be in the Shattering Void tier. Several great Shattering Void tier elites chasing together, that pavilion definitely hides a shocking treasure, Yuan Cheng he said. Unfortunately, it's targeted by Shattering Void tier elites, so we don't have a share, Li Fengyu said with a sigh. Ling Han smiled, and said, "That's not necessarily true. Things like opportunities don't have much to do with tier. If these Shattering Void tier elites could obtain the treasure in the pavilion, wouldn't they have gotten it long ago? Yeah, we might have a share." Li Fengyu became excited again. "But, a pavilion that grows legs and runs on its own, this is too strange," Zhu Xian'er said. Li Fengyu nodded repeatedly, and said, "Maybe it'll eat us all." Ling Han said, "Forget it, don't think about this problem for now. Even Shattering Void tier elites can't catch up, let alone us. If we're fated, this pavilion will appear in front of us on its own, and if not, hee. Indeed, such a treasure was not something they could obtain just because they wanted it. Now that they were on solid ground, the first thing to do was not to hurry on with their journey, but to have a good meal. Ling Han took out a section of the tentacle monster's tentacle, refining it with a powerful ability to shrink it and condense its essence. He then added it into the precious herbs inside the Black Tower and cooked it together. The most precious herb was that 10,000-year-old treasured pearl. Ling Han sliced off some of its powder and placed it into the pot. In the midst of cooking, rays of bright red light soared, as if the meat of a divine beast was being cooked. The fragrance was even more overflowing, making Hunyao and the gold-seeking rat jump up and down, and even steal a bite with rabbit. Half a day later, a pot of precious soup was finally cooked. Everyone took a bowl, and they could feel the vein-like patterns moving in the soup, as if the world was developing its mysteries. This is the perfect tonic soup. Nyo wants 2 bowls, no, 3 bowls. Hunyao had not even started to eat, and was already fighting for food. Zhi zhi, zhi 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 zhi. The gold-seeking rat also jumped onto Ling Han's shoulder and called out, meaning that the baby also wanted 3 bowls. Ling Han shrugged, and said, "Everyone take a bowl first, and if you can drink more, you can take more." Everyone was full of ambition. How could 1 bowl of such tonic soup be enough? However, after 1 bowl, aside from Ling Han and Hunyao, everyone's whole body was emitting rays of light, and their faces were all red, so how could they eat a second bowl? Since everyone couldn't eat anymore, Ling Han and Hunyao simply didn't use bowls, and surrounded the pot, directly scooping soup from inside and eating meat with their chopsticks, causing others to call them freaks. This pot of soup was greatly beneficial to their cultivation, which one of the items inside wasn't a great medicine. Eating it directly nourished their Tao flower and spiritual infant, engraving vein-like patterns, and growing at a shocking speed. In less than half a year, I'll be able to break through to the spiritual infant tier. Zhu Xian'er said in pleasant surprise. She always had a knot in her heart. Her cultivation was lower than Ling Han's, and her battle prowess was far inferior, so she couldn't help Ling Han. Advancing into the spiritual infant tier, she finally wouldn't have to act at the side every time. Li Fengyu and his sister, and Yuan Chengyi's gains were also great, making them unable to contain their joy. After resting, they set out again. This was still a paradise for beasts, with all kinds of powerful beasts emerging endlessly. Spiritual infant tier and deity transformation tier beasts were the most, and there were over a dozen heaven tier beasts. Shattering void tier beasts weren't seen for the time being, but it couldn't be guaranteed that there weren't any. It was very shocking. It was only a mystery realm, yet there were actually 2 shattering void tier demonic beasts. Although they weren't very powerful, and one had already been subdued by the Lunar King, against other people, shattering void tier cultivators would still be one-sided. Another 2 days later, they finally walked out of this area. A stone gate appeared in front of them, and after passing through, they turned back to see only 2 words, Beast Garden. This is the Beast Garden of some ancient power. It's a place for pets to be raised. Everyone was shocked. What kind of extravagance was this? A single beast garden would require experts like them to spend nearly 10 days to pass through. They only passed through, and didn't stroll through the entire area. Beast's level is limited by bloodline. Since they can reach the shattering void tier now, then their ancestors, when they were raised here, should also be in the shattering void tier, Ling Han said. This was the most frightening part. This force could capture shattering void tier beasts to rear. Why did this sound like a dream? Only the ancient dynasty that wanted to split open the skies in ancient times could be so domineering. Ling Han thought for a moment. That ancient dynasty once unified the entire continent, but in the end, it still fell short of success, and couldn't split open the skies. No wonder shattering void tier elites are so nervous. This is very likely the location of that ancient dynasty's imperial capital. Secret treasure, everyone's scalp went numb. This was a real ancient dynasty's treasure trove. They hurriedly advanced, but after the plains was a barren desert with yellow sand everywhere, stretching as far as the eye could see. If it weren't for the fireball that never changed position in the sky, they would very likely have lost their way. Just like that, they walked for another 3 days, and a palace suddenly appeared in front of them. The residence of an ancient dynasty's emperor. After they walked over, they discovered that it wasn't the case. The plaque on the palace's door impressively wrote the 2 words, Tool Pavilion. As the name implied, the Tool Pavilion was obviously a place to store treasures. There were many people surrounding the palace. There was obviously a treasure ahead, but they didn't move forward, so there was only one possibility: they were blocked and couldn't enter. Ling Han and the others walked over, and after asking some people, they found out that there was a metal puppet standing guard at the entrance of the Tool Pavilion. If they wanted to enter, they had to pass its test first. If they didn't pass and tried to barge in, they would only be killed on the spot. What test? Chapter 7:18. The test was very simple. One didn't have to battle this puppet, but only had to place one's palm on a stone tablet. If a light flashed, one would be qualified to enter the Tool Pavilion. It sounded so simple, but there were pitifully few people who could make the stone tablet light up. Aside from the powerful figures of the older generation, there were only Yao Huiyu, Su Xiu-ran, Dong Ling, and a few others in the younger generation. Just place your hand on the stone tablet? A newcomer asked curiously. Of course not. You have to meditate on all your martial arts and cultivation techniques in your mind, and the stone tablet will magnify the power of these secret techniques to the extreme, thereby evaluating your ultimate battle prowess, an old antique said. This is the stone of martial art, a legendary treasure. Even if you're only in the flower blossom tier, you could possibly surpass the shattering void tier, because this evaluates the battle prowess of the pinnacle tier, or in other words, puts everyone's tier on the same level, and then compares their battle prowess. Such a ranking should be said to be a ranking of potential. It's possible that you'll be far from reaching such a level in the future, or it's possible that you'll have another fortuitous encounter, and might surpass in the future. That old antique said, not really. There are 100 names on the stone tablet, and if your pinnacle tier battle prowess can surpass any one of them, you can be ranked among them. The stronger your future battle prowess is, the higher your ranking will be. However, although this mystery realm has opened for the first time in hundreds of thousands of years, this martial arts stone is very likely to record all the prodigies of the last million years, or even millions of years. To be able to leave one's name on it, even if it's only the last place, is a super genius that's hard to come by in tens of thousands of years. Hearing the old antique's words, everyone was a bit excited. If they could leave their name on the stone tablet, wouldn't that shock the ancients and surpass the contemporaries? However, the difficulty was too high. A few people had already entered the Tool Pavilion, but none of them left their name on the stone tablet. Ling Han walked over. The person who ranked first on the stone tablet was actually called first. Where did he get the courage from? Did he think no one had ever done it before, and no one would be able to do it in the future? The second place was much more modest. His name was Primeval Beginning. The third was Four Directions, the fourth was Shadow, the fifth was Moon, the sixth was Ancient, the seventh was Bai, the eighth was Ming Dao, the ninth was Donkey Riding Old Man, and the 10th was Nine Paths. As Ling Han went down, every name was extremely unfamiliar, but when he came to the 99th name, a familiar name finally jumped into his eyes, Lunar King. His heart trembled. Had this just been left behind by the Lunar King, or had it been a few 100,000 years ago? If it was the latter, would the Purple Moon Empire be related to this ancient dynasty? Ling Han was lost in thought for a moment, and only came back to his senses after Zhu Xian called him a few times. Let's give it a try too. They parted the crowd and tried to push their way forward. Some people were easy to talk to. They had already tried and failed, so it didn't matter if they gave it to others. However, some people had bad tempers and were even more jealous. If they could not enter, they did not want others to enter. Facing such people, there was naturally no need to be polite. Ling Han directly attacked. Xiao, 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 the dog blocking the way was swung out like a scarecrow. Wang, the stone tablet ahead glowed, which meant that someone had passed the test and could enter the tool pavilion. That's Wenren Qian Qian. As expected of a daughter blessed by the heavens. They all say that her strength is second only to Dong Ling, and it is indeed true. Che, do you know what light appeared when Dong Ling, passed? I don't know. Let me tell you, the martial arts stone can only emit light of 3 colors, red, green, and purple. Among them, purple light represents the weakest battle prowess, while red light represents the strongest. Just now, Wenren Qian Qian triggered purple light. But Dong Ling, triggered red light. With that said, everyone nodded. They were both daughters blessed by the heavens, but Wenren Qian Qian was still a large distance away from Dong Ling, brother Ling. When it came to Ling Han, Wenren Qian Qian couldn't help but pause, and didn't immediately enter the tool pavilion. Anyways, it wouldn't make much of a difference. She wanted to personally witness Ling Han's extreme battle prowess. Although this did not mean that Ling Han could really reach such heights in the future, it could still be used as a reference. Ling Han nodded, which was considered a greeting. Jia Ming is here. Everyone dispersed. This was a fiend who killed without fear, but he was the most valued successor of the Earth Dragon sect's next generation. Who would dare to harm him? Jia Ming walked over with large strides, and a terrifying aura rose from his whole body, transforming into large snakes. Ling Han could not help but frown. Jia Ming's cultivation had made an astonishing leap, and he had actually reached the deity transformation realm. He had once said that there was a fateful encounter for him in the ocean, and it was true that he had come. In just a few short days, he had stepped into the deity transformation realm. In the younger generation, only Su Xiu Ran had managed to do so. However, weren't Earth Dragons earthworms? Why did the majority of the people of the Earth Dragon sect manifest the silhouette of large snakes? Although they were all long and wriggling things, there was still a huge difference between snakes and earthworms, right? Jia Ming walked like a dragon or a tiger, and it was as if there was an ancient wild beast hidden within his body, incomparably terrifying. Amidst the rumbling of the earth, he walked in front of the martial arts stone, first gave Ling Han a murderous look, then reached out his hand and pressed it against the martial arts stone. Wang, the martial arts stone immediately shone purple light. But Jia Ming did not let go of his hand, and instead continued to press it. The light emitted by the martial arts stone changed color, becoming green. This meant that Jia Ming's extreme battle prowess had increased, which was very normal. To press one's hand on it, one needed to derive one's own secret technique in the sea of consciousness, and after the martial arts stone accepted it, it would continue to determine the extreme battle prowess, and then display it. Thus, it was impossible to surpass the highest battle prowess, but one could conceal one's true strength. Haha, my battle prowess will break both the past and the present. Jia Ming shouted loudly. His entire body surged with blood qi, forming a frightening pressure. The people nearby all collapsed onto the ground. They were actually unable to withstand his attack. Ling Han's expression was solemn. His strength and Jia Ming's were originally about the same, and now that the other had shockingly stepped into the deity transformation tier, Ling Han would definitely be inferior in terms of physical arts alone. If the other's battle prowess soared straight to the heaven tier, then Ling Han would really be in trouble. It's turned red. Heavens! Everyone held their heads and cried out in surprise. As expected, he was a heaven-bestowed genius, making the martial arts stone manifest red, on par with Dong Ling and Su Xiu Ran. Ah! Jia Ming roared again, the veins on his forehead bulging, and the silhouette of a large snake appeared behind him, hissing. Wang, the martial arts stone manifested black light. Those 100 names from before all disappeared, and 2 words appeared on the stone tablet, leave name. Jia Ming's strength had reached the level where he could stand shoulder to shoulder with the ancient geniuses, and he could at least be ranked in the top 100. Chapter 719. Ling Han's heart instantly froze. In the mystery realm, all kinds of messy and unimaginable monsters could appear, so it wouldn't be strange for a ghost to appear. But curiosity killed the cat. He was both bold and curious, so he couldn't help but sneak towards that patch of dense forest. His figure was light and agile, and he even drew out that divine sword, acting very cautiously. He came to the edge of the dense forest, and lightly pushed aside the grass. He saw a white-robed person crying in front of him, and the shocking thing was that she actually didn't have a head. What a ghost! Ling Han tightened his grip on the sword hilt, and there was a numb feeling all over his body. It wasn't fear, but excitement. He had never slain a ghost before. Xiao, he leaped up, and swiftly slashed with his sword. That white-robed person suddenly raised her head. Who said she didn't have a head? It was just that she had buried her head too low just then, and her arms were wrapped around her neck, so she could only reach the white cloth, and couldn't even reach her neck. Thus, he had mistakenly thought that she didn't have a head. The ninth king, Hu Feiyun. This young girl's face was full of tears, and there was a confused expression on her face. Only when the sword flashed in front of her eyes did her small mouth suddenly open, and an expression of shock appeared on her face. However, she actually didn't even have the instinctive reaction to dodge or parry. It was already too late for Ling Han to withdraw his sword, so he immediately gave it another forceful push. The tip of the sword instantly brushed past Hu Feiyun's left side, and a gust of wind swept past, causing her clothes to flutter. Pu, 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 Pu. As the sword ray swept past, at least 100 large trees behind Hu Feiyun were all chopped in half, and a large number of them collapsed with a rumble. Hu Feiyun was dazed for a moment, and then suddenly jumped up. She finally came to her senses. She wiped away her tears, and sobbed as she said, Why did you attack me? There was a look of grievance on her pretty face. Ling Han bared his teeth, and said, I thought you were a ghost. I'm not a ghost. Hu Feiyun hurriedly shook her head, but then immediately showed an expression of fear, and asked, There's a ghost here. She was so scared that she was trembling. Ling Han was really unable to imagine that such a young girl could actually sit on the position of the ninth king, and even the left and right ministers, as well as the 7 generals, were all in awe of her. He chuckled, and said, There shouldn't be any. Then there might be. Hu Feiyun, however, liked to get into a dead end. Even if there are ghosts, there's nothing to be afraid of, Ling Han said with a smile. As the saying goes, if you don't do anything shameful, you won't be afraid of ghosts knocking on your door in the middle of the night. Ah, don't say any more. Hu Feiyun was so scared that her pretty face had gone pale. I've spiked laxatives in the spiritual liquid that I gave my sisters to drink, and I'm going to be haunted by ghosts, woo. Ling Han couldn't help but be speechless. He could only console her, and say, It's fine. That's all. It's not enough for ghosts to target you. Do you think that all ghosts are very idle? How do you know whether ghosts are idle or not? Have you seen a ghost before? Hu Feiyun was trembling in fear, yet an expression of curiosity appeared on her face. Ling Han was a little driven mad, and hurriedly changed this topic. He said, Ninth King, why are you crying here alone? Where are your 3 guards? Hu Feiyun immediately began to cry again when she heard this question. She sobbed, and said, Ting Qin, Yun Rong, and the others are all dead. Woo! They were all eaten by an evil beast in order to protect me. Ling Han was astonished. Based on how much Empress Xing doted on the ninth king, the 3 female guards that she had sent out were not only at the peak stage of the low extreme, but also at the level of 3-star or 4-star geniuses through secret techniques. Their battle prowess was comparable to the late stage or even the peak stage of the medium extreme. However, even the 3 of them were no match for the evil beast even after joining forces. Just how powerful was that evil beast? It had to at least have battle prowess at the high extreme. In fact, it might even be at the late stage or peak stage. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for none of the 3 guards to escape. Even Ling Han could only flee if he encountered such an existence. If level 2 godly metal was bombarded by a battle prowess at the high extreme, there was still a possibility that it could be damaged. Moreover, his divine sense hadn't been significantly enhanced, so the 7-kill subduing soul technique probably wouldn't have any effect either. This is their duty. Now that you're fine, they can also rest in peace, Ling Han consoled. Woo-woo, but I'm still very sad, Hu Feiyun said as she wiped away her tears, sobbing. Alright, you won't be pretty if you cry anymore. Ling Han wasn't skilled at consoling people. Moreover, compared to Hun Yo, Hu Feiyun was more like a child, and Hun Yo was the adult. However, these words hit Hu Feiyun where it hurt. She hurriedly wiped away her tears and tensed her face, not allowing her tears to flow out again. She drew out a mirror and looked at herself. An aggrieved expression appeared on her face again, and it was as if she was about to cry again. As expected, I've become uglier. You're not ugly, you're not ugly. You're very pretty. Ling Han hurriedly drew out some food and handed it over. Come, eat something. If it were Hun Yo, she would definitely be beaming with joy and forget everything. However, this 9th king wasn't a glutton, and her expression didn't change in the slightest. Then wait here. When it's time, you'll naturally be able to leave, Ling Han said. No. Hu Feiyun hurriedly jumped up, and grabbed onto the corner of his shirt. I'm afraid, I don't want to be alone. She looked very pitiful, as if she were a little girl throwing a tantrum. Ling Han really couldn't imagine that such a person could become an all-powerful super elite in the future. However, the previous 8 kings had all advanced into the heavenly body tier 1 after another. Going by convention, she shouldn't be an exception either. Fine, you can come with me. Ling Han nodded. He couldn't stand Hu Feiyun's eyes, which seemed like they could speak. Thankfully, this woman was a delicate and naive type. Otherwise, if she were the seductive type, she would definitely be able to mesmerize a man to death with her pair of eyes that could speak. Fortunately, he could toss her to Shui Yenyu when they reached the Crimson Lake. Only then did Hu Feiyun breathe a sigh of relief. However, she was still unwilling to let go of Ling Han's shirt, as if she were afraid that he would slip away. Ling Han sighed, and brought this bum along with him. Fortunately, they weren't far from the Crimson Lake, and it would only take them about a day's journey. Chi-hu, Chi-hu. They walked for a while, and a rugged mountain path appeared in front of them. Meanwhile, a terrifying beast's roar reverberated from the top of the mountain, as if it were announcing its dominance. It's that evil beast. Hu Feiyun was instantly scared into shrinking closer to Ling Han, and said, Don't go over, you'll be eaten. Can't you say something nicer? Ling Han pondered for a moment, and then said, Our goal is only to pass through this place, so there's no need to clash with that demonic beast. We can just silently pass through. Hu Feiyun hurriedly nodded. She was indeed very timid. The mountain rocks here rose and fell, and were a natural cover. They used the rocks as cover along the way, and passed through this mountain. When they were leaving, Ling Han saw a strange beast perched high on the mountain peak. Its shape was like a wolf, yet it had a pair of gigantic black wings. It also had 3 heads, which were gold, silver, and red respectively, and looked incredibly strange. Even though they were separated by such a long distance, Ling Han's gaze still caused this demonic beast to react. One of the wolf's heads immediately came over, and instantly showed an expression of disdain. It did not move, but the other demonic wolf beside it flew up. Its appearance was similar to that of the wolf, but it was much smaller. It only had 2 heads, one silver, and one red. Moreover, the silver head was much smaller, and was only half the size of the red head. The 2-headed flying wolf flew toward Ling Han and Hu Feiyun, and behind it was the image of 2 mountains and a river. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.